The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Saturdays or Sundays, SOR Media, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this broadcast or podcast without the express written consent of SOR Media is strictly prohibited. Listener discretion is advised. Are you experienced? Then come own the night with us.
Little brother has taken control, shoveling dirt in every hole. Predators to condemn your soul, watching you and watching me. We're all
Station atop the mountains of British Columbia, live from SOR headquarters. This is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
We live behind glass curtains and act like nothing's wrong. Soon you will belong.
You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, and on Spaced Out Radio on iTunes. You can follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, and on Instagram at Dave Scott SOR, on Facebook at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio.
Brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye with the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride on Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. Wait for you to fall. We will expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. Little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized.
It's Tuesday, September 18th, Wednesday, September 19th, if you're on the East Coast or across the pond. And this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. Hope you had a great day and night. I am your host, Dave Scott, broadcasting to you live from the Great White North on top of the mountains of central British Columbia, right here at SOR headquarters. We are 150,000 strong nightly on the SOR radio network and Deep Talk Radio, and we say hello to each and every one of you. Also, if you want to take in our archives, they are free on our YouTube channel. Go to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio and hit that subscribe button if you don't mind. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you. You can rock out to Bumblefoot, shop at our store, read up on the encounter online, and so much more. Don't forget, you got about 10 days. That's it. Until the start of the first annual Caribou Paracon, presented by Spaced Out Radio and the Canadian Society of Questers. We get going September 28th through 30th. David Weatherly, Grant Cameron, Ross Allison, and so much more. Get your tickets at questers.ca. That's questers.ca. Click on the Fall Conference and get them now. Tonight's show is brought to you by the YouTube channel Ensuho. Sebastian Martin brings high-quality messages to the masses. Go to spacedoutradio.com, click on the Ensuho banner, and subscribe to the channel today. We're going to have a good one tonight. I can feel it. I can just feel it. My intuition is kicking in. Lorianne Spagna is a best-selling author, speaker, spiritual teacher, Ascension guide, multi-dimensional channeler. Wow, she wears a lot of hats. Well, she assists others to help awaken their alignment with their true divine source, which exists within each and every being, so that all beings can live their best life ever. Who doesn't want to do that? Honestly, show of hands. Who gets out there and says, "No, I don't want to live the best life ever"? Well, if you're having troubles with that, this is where Lori Spagna comes in. Lori radically transformed her own life after a series of near-death experiences and an abduction experience while living in Hawaii. For over 20 years, she has transformed the lives of thousands of people, and she also works with animals as well. I mean, this is a special lady. This takes a lot of talent in order to go down this path. And we're going to learn all about this on Spaced Out Radio tonight. Then at the bottom of hour number 3, Everett Themer will be back with the latest edition of The Encounter from our SOR newsroom. But first, we bring in the lovely, the talented Lori Spagna to Spaced Out Radio for the first time. Lori, thank you so much for coming on the show. How are you?
Well, I'm wonderful, Dave. Thanks so much for having me. I'm looking forward to our evening tonight.
I am very much looking forward to hearing your story as well, because one of the things we love to do here on this show is to sit there and listen to the experiences. What brought us to this point in life? Because each and every one of us out there who's experienced something strange or odd has a story. How did you get started in this 20 years ago?
Well, I think just as far back as I can remember, I know I always wanted to make the world a better place. Like, it sounds so corny, but that's really true. And I wanted to be of service to animals. That was my mantra. I wanted to be of service to animals on a global scale. I said it over and over again for years. And I also had this mantra in my head that I wanted God to be my boss. And I was also always a truth seeker. I always wanted the truth, no matter what. And those three mantras kind of collided when I think I hit my own personal rock bottom, which was when I was, working in corporate America for 20 years out of college, driving the hamster wheel, so to speak, or riding the hamster wheel. And I was, at that point, like 65 pounds overweight. I was smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day. I was $150,000 in bad credit card debt. I was drinking 6 or 8 beers a day. I was pumped up on pharmaceutical drugs, and by well-meaning doctors. And I was, I was really, like, all of this culminated when my brother died. My brother died of a drug overdose, and I started hearing him. I started getting messages from him, and he would kind of joke, and I could hear him, like, almost in the same way we can hear one another. And he was a very comedic kind of guy, and he would say, "Hey, Law, it's your dead brother, Jeff." And I thought, I am not making this up. So I started to test it, the way we do. Like, if I'm not crazy, then show me this. If I'm really hearing you, then prove it, do this. And I learned there were some things that he couldn't do, but there were some things he could do. And then through following that, the ultimate message that I was getting from him was like, you have to change your ways, otherwise you're kind of headed down the same path I was. And I followed that, and I ended up quitting my job on a real risk, sort of, and I went from a 6-figure job to a dog training. I became a dog trainer. And as a dog trainer, I started hearing messages from animals. So they would say, if you listen to me, I'm going to teach you. I'll teach you. And that's what I did. I started listening. And that's really where it started from. That was the kickoff of it. And I could go on from there, but
you know what, Lori, I think it's important to learn. I mean, here you are, a professional woman working, in corporate America, like you said, and then all of a sudden you start hearing voices. Now, for people who listen to that and just hear that quick, blatant statement, they think, well, maybe the pressure was getting to her, the stress at work was getting to her, maybe this wasn't any type of communication, but maybe the stress that was causing some sort of mental disorder. And yet for you, it was plain as day because you didn't know where anything like this was coming from.
Yeah, well, the thing is that is kind of what the human mind does. It's like, oh, well, maybe she's crazy. And actually, I was married at that time. And my then husband actually did think that, and he divorced me. He was like, I didn't sign up for this, and you actually think you can go off those pharmaceutical drugs, and you actually think you can quit smoking, and you actually think you can quit drinking, and you're crazy, you're whacked. I didn't sign up for this. So that was part of what happened. He divorced me. But the thing is what was happening very, very quickly was that as I listened to this voice, the initial voice of my brother, it was a voice of love. And the weird thing is, Dave, nobody thought it was crazy that I was miserable, overweight, $150,000 in debt, smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day, drinking 8 beers a day, pumped up on pharmaceuticals, miserable, dying a slow death. Nobody thought that was weird. But the moment I was like, hey, there's this voice from my brother who loved me saying there's a better way, and you can be free of all this stuff. That was crazy. That was crazy. So to me, humanity in that sense is a little crazy, because I look at the world right now and I think a lot of what's going on in humanity is crazy. But for me, on a path of aligning with love and aligning with consciousness, to me, that's what set me right. That's because, let me just say this, what I didn't say. Within 2 years of quitting my job, and I did move to Maui. I followed that guidance of my own brother and the animals. Within 2 years, everything that I mentioned was gone. I was free of cigarettes forever. I was free of alcohol forever. I lost 65 pounds of body weight. Within 2 years, $150,000 of credit card debt was gone. Within 2 years, I was aligned with my right course, doing work that I loved. Within 2 years, all the pharmaceutical drugs were gone forever. So you tell me, maybe that was a crazy voice, but somehow my course got righted. Everything lined up right for me. So to me, I don't think it was a crazy voice. But now I know
that almost sounds like some sort of divine intervention there that you had no control over.
Yes, that's exactly right. I call what happened with my brother that he was, in a sense, like my angel, my wake-up call. That's really what he was, and that's also what the animals were, because even what happened with the animals was they were saying, well, if you want to help us, we're going to need to know how to help humans, because we're here helping humans. Now, I didn't know that at the time, because I was actually being trained by a dog trainer who had worked for the United States government, training military service dogs. And actually, he put me through massive tests before he would even hire me, like multiple interviews, and we weren't even allowed to touch dogs until we spent a month in a classroom, being videotaped and recorded and critiqued. So, I don't know, the world around me kind of thought I was pretty normal, even though the people in my intimate circles who were hearing this stuff kind of thought I was crazy.
It's amazing how the people who you're supposed to tell everything to, your best friends, your confidants, it's amazing how when you go down this path of discovery, how they abandon you first. Yes,
I really upset the apple cart. In fact, you're absolutely right. For the first 2 years while I was in Maui, when I first moved there, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to become a dog trainer. I'm going to take everything I've learned from working with this man, and I'm going to make a difference for animals. I thought I was going to be a great dog trainer in Maui. But during those 2 years, every person that I knew in my intimate circles was basically either screaming at me to get a job, or like it was nonstop, like almost emotional abuse, harassment. Who do you think you are? What do you think you're doing? And for me, I was like, I'm just trying to be happy. I'm just trying to be happy and make a difference. But for them, it was like, the rage, the audacity of who does she think she is? Go get a job.
Yeah. And yet the transformation on how you became healthier, you quit smoking, you stopped drinking, you quit any type of prescription medicine, you dropped 65 pounds, which is a miracle for a lot of people. They're not even complimenting you on that.
Well, by the end of the 2 years, when I really started to own it, they were. Because I remember this one point in the car after I came back from Maui, And I mean, what really set me back from that was that at the end of the 2 years, my most beloved dog, whose name was Kenya, died in my arms. And I knew that was, for me, that was my own death. Like, I just couldn't handle that. So I kind of did come back on my knees, you know, like I couldn't, that was my own death in the end. I mean, there were a lot of other amazing death, real near-death experiences, which we can talk about. But when I came back, I remember being in the car at one point with my father, and he said something like, well, Maui was a complete waste. And I was like, are you kidding me? Can you see what I accomplished in those 2 years? And I owned it so wholly and completely that it was never, ever mentioned again like that. It really became like, yeah, Maui transformed everything, those 2 years in Maui.
So
yeah.
As you started down your own personal path of enlightenment, did you, when you jumped down the rabbit hole, expect it ever to stop? Did you know which direction you were going? How did you get started in finding yourself?
First of all, I didn't know anything. I had no teacher. I didn't know anything. What I did know, I was seeking, from a spiritual perspective, I knew I wanted to be of service, but I didn't link that to spiritual. I just linked that to, I wanted to make a difference in the world. But that is, when you choose that you really want to be of service, that is the divine steps in, because it realizes that massive request you're making must be met by some way to do it. So that there was that. But the real thing was I didn't know what I was doing. I completely, in a way, lost my way. But the way I got started, to answer you more directly, was I knew one thing I knew was I kept saying, how does love behave? If I was being loved, what would that be? If I was acting as love, the embodiment of love. I didn't even use those words, but I did say, how would love behave? That was my daily thing. What would love do right now? Because I knew that source was love. I mean, I knew that it was love. I knew that's what I wanted to behave as. So that's where it started. In that way, yeah.
Do you find, though, that, you know, when you hear the word love, or when I hear the word love, that little voice of skepticism comes into my head here, and I say, you know, is it really a Beatles song, All You Need Is Love? It seems a little bit more complicated than just, you know, finding love for yourself.
Well, I mean, it is more complicated than that. It definitely is. But at the same time, it's also really simple, because it was that willingness to love that led me home to love and allowed me to do and become everything that I am, what I've become. So it is more complicated. Yes, that's true. But at the same time, it's not, because that's ultimately really all anyone wants is love. And the biggest mission for all of humanity, every individual, is to really fall in love with ourselves and then take that love and share it. And this is in ways that feel good and right for all of us, without harm to anyone, to the best of our abilities. So yeah, it's more complicated than that. That's very simple to say that, but really it's true.
I can understand that. I really can understand where you're going. But for people who have never gone down this path, because when you jump down the rabbit hole like you have, or like I have, and many others in this field, because we just feel the need to do that with our experiences that we cannot explain, did you ever think that there was a point where you were trying to turn back and say, well, maybe this is something I don't want to be looking into? Or was this something that when you were, much like myself, when you jumped both feet into the deep end of the pool, that you knew that you had to go to the bottom and figure out what's coming next?
Well, I never ever felt like I had to turn back. I always felt if there were mistakes, there were times I questioned. I thought, wow, I must not be doing something right, or I must be doing something wrong, or I often felt like I lost my way, or there were distractions. And I think that's one of the biggest thing, even if, because I know there's a lot of, like, you know, conspiracy buffs and truthers that are waking up. I think that's the biggest thing, is that all of that, while it's so important, is also, it's all distraction implants. These are like implants. we get distracted. And I had a lot of that. I had a lot of distraction. So relationships would come in and they would challenge me and upset me, and I'd get entangled in some aspect of a relationship that was sucking the life out of me, draining me, depleting me, exhausting me. And through that entanglement of trying to work through it, I realized I lost sight of my own love, or I got so involved in that shadow aspect, or I'd learn about something that was going on in the external reality that would engulf me, and then I'd be consumed by that for a while, and that would drain me and exhaust me and deplete me until I finally realized, okay, I've lost sight of it. The distractions are a huge part of it. But did I ever think I was going the wrong way? No. I just felt distracted on the journey, and I'd have to write my course again.
When you decided on your journey, you said that you didn't know which direction you were going. So how did you figure out the path that you need or that was best for you in order to start this incredible journey of ascension?
Well, let me say, I didn't. I had so many choices along the way. Are you going to go down animal communication route and only work with animals? Or are you going to, now psychic gifts were developed. Are you going to share about psychic stuff? And there was like Akashic records. Like as I expanded what I could offer to people and to animals, expanded with me. So there was so much I could offer and do and provide and share and teach. And I did not know what my path was going to be. But want to know the question? And I guarantee you, if people start asking this, watch out. This is what ultimately helped me really write my course and align with what I was here to do. And that was by asking this question that I'm about to ask. I'm about to say, without trying to answer it myself. That's the key. You can't answer it yourself. You have to ask it and allow what happens to happen. And the question is, what is the highest and best journey for me? What is my personal highest and best path? And if you ask that and then you follow up, please align me with that. Whatever is my highest and best journey. That is one of the most powerful questions you can ask in the universe. And you have to also understand, like whenever we ask a question, our job is, when we really are in the, I don't know the answer. We humans, we try to immediately answer the question, and we block the answer of the divine or of our own higher knowing. So the key is to not answer it. And understand just law of cause and effect. The effect of a question asked is the answer. That's law. That's a universal law, cause and effect. If you ask a question, the answer will be provided. So you don't provide it. Let higher knowing provide it. But that is such a powerful question to ask. What's my highest and best? What's my highest and best journey? And align me with that, please.
I want to get into that. I want to get into that here very, very soon here. But one of the things I also want to get into is your work with animals, because for a lot of people, animals become a major part of our family. I know in my household here, we have 3 dogs and 1 cat. We had a second cat, but he decided to move out. So I don't know where he went. He just decided to move out and wanted to go explore the wilderness. I guess he was of age. So that's okay. That happens. But, our animals are a very, very important part of our life. And, I wouldn't want it any other way. How did you start communicating with animals, and how did you know that it was actually them and not just your mind playing tricks on you?
Yeah. Oh, let me tell you how I knew. Well, first, when I was working with the dog trainer, that gentleman who worked for the government for 20 years, he would videotape us every day. There were like 1,000 people applied to work with him. Only 8 were recruited. And after the first 4 weeks, there were 6 of us left. But because he was videotaping us, and everything had to be, automatic, no thinking, my mind would go blank. And in the blankness, I would hear animals talking. But the way I really knew it was real, I started practicing it with my dog training clients, more like, look, I'm learning this, and I can't really validate or guarantee what's going to come through. But here's when I really knew. I was living in Maui. I was on Craigslist, and someone posted a note saying that they were looking for an animal communicator. They were on another island, they were on Oahu. And I responded, and I said, look, I'm an animal communicator, but I'm not a professional, and I'll do it as a gift. I can't guarantee, but I'm happy to be of service in whatever way I can. And send me a picture. Don't tell me anything. So I never knew the person, but she sent me a picture, and it was a horse, a foal. And all I had was a picture of the foal and the mare, the mother, their heads. And I started to connect with them through the picture remotely, because of course they're on another island. And what I kept hearing was like baffling to me, because all I kept hearing was like, go below the knee, go below the knee. And then I was like thinking, like, I don't know, I'm stumped. I don't know what this means. I kept hearing, I'm stumped. I didn't understand it. So I wrote back to the woman and I was like, look, I'm really sorry. I don't know what I'm getting, because all I keep hearing is go below the knee. I'm stumped. And I'm sorry. I'm not getting anything. Other than that, like, I don't know what that means. And she writes me back and she says, Lori, we had to amputate below the knee. Please go back and reconnect with this horse, because whatever you're getting is right. There's something. So I'm like, okay, great. I'll try again. Don't tell me anything. She already knew not to tell me anything. So I go back, and what I hear from this baby foal is there's bad people around me. They want to kill me. Tell them to go away. I want to live. And oh, by the way, could you give me some more carrots? So I go back and I tell her that, and she's like, that's exactly right. We didn't know if we should euthanize this baby. We didn't know. So now that you got that, we're going to get a prosthetic. We're going to invest in that and keep the horse alive. After that, I knew there was no way to stop me with the animal communicating. So I kept doing it and doing it and doing it. And it's just what happens is after a while you're doing it, there's no way you can know certain things. Any real, true animal communicator knows this. You start getting information that you could never know, and that's being validated by someone, and after a while you just start, your confidence builds, and you realize how much you're helping. That's the way it starts, as far as I'm concerned, and that's what started for me.
How communicative are animals? Let's say a dog.
Well, most animals are really communicative, especially when they're communicating with an animal communicator for the first time. Most animals they have so much to share. And the thing that I say about animals in our families is they know our secrets. They're here to help us. So every animal in a family dynamic actually has the wisdom, the consciousness that human is sort of not aware of. And they become the teachers. They also become the healers for their own humans in their family. Because animals speak a universal language of energy. We actually speak it too. We just don't realize that we're speaking it. And so what happens is the animals take on that energy that the humans are sort of holding, whether it's stress, anxiety, fear, worry, grief, whatever's going on in the family dynamic. And of course, there's other kinds of energies that we enjoy more: happiness, fulfillment, joy, the simple pleasures of life, whatever it is. They're experiencing that with us. They're feeling it because that energy is basically vibrating from us, energetic vibration like ripples in a pond. Then they're sharing our pond, so to speak, our home, and they pick that up, and then they display it. They mirror it back. And so it might show up as an illness in the body of the animal, a disease, or it might show up in a behavioral pattern that the animal's displaying behaviorally. But no matter what, they know, they have a knowing. This is the energy that my human is embodying. This is their energy signature, and I'm showing it to them to help them see what's either right, so to speak, in their life, working really well, or what's not working, what's where they need to do healing, where they need to resolve issues, what behaviors maybe aren't working. So they're always mirroring that. And they know, they have a knowing. Because this is the other thing about animals too, Dave, that's really interesting, is that we as a human species have been, especially with influences from what I call, and I think your tribe totally will understand this, negative alien influences, we've been mostly functioning from left analytical brain. And animals are mostly functioning, non-human animals, from a right sensory awareness brain. The left brain's trying to figure out what the right brain already knows. And also animals are much more heart activated. We are just learning to connect more fully with our heart, to develop our brain matter, to strengthen the brain in our heart. We know from the Institute of Heart Math and other, scientific studies that our hearts have brain matter in them. But we have to develop that. We have to open our heart centers. Animals don't have to develop it. They already have it. So they have a lot more brain matter in their heart, which is why they're so, especially animal companions, so empathic. They're the ultimate empaths. They're ultra-sensory, and they're incredibly compassionate. We know that. Our animals sometimes love better than our human companions. This is because of that brain matter in the heart and that empathic nature of theirs.
Do animals differ, though? For instance, I could see a dog being more happy and loyal and a cat pissed off because it's 9:31 p.m. on a Tuesday night, West Coast time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yes, they do, because all different species of animals, they all have different missions, and they're all unique in their own ways of what their unique gifts are to bring to planet Earth and to humanity. So cats are very multi-sensory, interdimensional beings. So they actually have very easy access. This is definitely woo-woo stuff. We're like on a woo-woo hour. They have ability to access other dimensions and other realities much easier than most other animals, for example. Whereas dogs are much more grounded right in this reality with us that we're sharing. So, and some of the reasons why cats sort of appear to be pissed off also is because they tend to assist. And this is so woo-woo, so I hope it's cool. But they really are assisting non-physical entities, non-physical beings, in many cases, to cross dimensional timelines of space and time. So they might actually take on entities, so to speak, and help them pass over or pass through. Does this make sense? It's really out there.
It totally makes sense. But I mean, as humans, we, for the most part, have an absolute love of animals, whether they are some sort of pet, and that pet could be reptile, it could be dog, cat, bird, whatever it may be. I have a good friend of mine who has a capuchin monkey. And, so a pet can be pretty much anything. But I mean, we have this love and desire of nature and animals. And I'm wondering, with the communication side, does it matter whether the animal is wild or whether it is domesticated? Is the spirit the same? Can they understand what we are saying? How does that work?
Yeah, well, okay. First, it doesn't matter what they are. Communication, animal communication happens in a number of different ways. Number one, there's telepathy, which is brain to brain. And that is real and scientifically valid. And there is a brainwave frequency called the theta brainwave. So some animal communicators, we are basically translators. And if we can connect with an animal on a frequency, we can have a telepathic dialogue. So some animal communicators might use an alpha brainwave, which is kind of like a moderate meditation. Even when you're chilling out in front of TV and you're zoning, that sometimes is an alpha brainwave. But that brainwave is a very neutral kind of peace brainwave. It's not as clear and precise. I use a theta brainwave if I'm doing telepathy, and that's what I teach to other people, my students. And that brainwave frequency is a very clear, conscious frequency. That is a real brainwave that we can access when we learn how. And that's how telepathy happens. Now, an animal might not necessarily speak English or French or German, although some of them do speak languages because they pick up an enormous amount through their humans and also through their own connection with universal intelligence, which they all have, just like we do. So you might get, as a telepathic communicator, you might get a dialogue in a language, but you also might get a dialogue in visions, like what that animal's witnessing. Like, he might not know that a picture on a wall is a picture of his human or a picture of a sunset, but he can show you, this is what I'm seeing. Right now, I'm looking at this. And you can see what he's seeing, for example, or this is what I'm hearing, and you might pick up a sound that he's hearing, or this is what I'm feeling in my body, or this is what the emotions I'm feeling around me. You can pick that up. Now, if you're empathic, you can pick that up extrasensorily. That's not the same thing as a telepathic dialogue brain to brain, but it's still a form of animal communication. So we can exchange energetic information as well with them. That might be heart to heart, or that might just be, our skin is the ultimate sensory organ. We can exchange information through the skin sensorily. So that's another form of exchange of information. They all can do that. It doesn't matter what their species is. It's just that a wild animal might be like, yeah, I'm not necessarily interested in talking to you right now. See ya. He may or may not want to speak with you or communicate or dialogue. He may, or, and he has a free will just like we all do. So he might be like, yeah, not interested. Or maybe he is. And the other thing that's amazing too, Dave, is that collectives can speak with us too. We can speak with the collective of a whole species. So I've had collectives of cows, like the collective of cows speak with me about how they feel about being farm animals and being eaten, and how they feel about their calves being taken from them. I mean, it's amazing. They're really, their consciousness is so much more expanded than we, in our limited consciousness, have realized or have given them credit for.
Although I would assume the pig is very happy about the bacon that he provides.
I'm really sad to say I don't necessarily agree with that.
You and I are going to agree to disagree on that one, because if I were a pig, I would be very, very proud to know that my bacon is going to a good cause.
Okay. Well, let me share this. This is totally not from an animal communication point of view, but I think I'm going to maybe really rock this. Like, when I say rock it, I might upset some apple carts, but because this is your show's a show about, I think, a truther show. It's my perspective from tapping into consciousness that eating animals is the influence of what I would call a reptilian agenda. And that's not actually natural to the human body. And that's irrelevant. That's not because of my love of animals or my choices of eating. I make it my business to be as neutral as I can on things, because that's my role. But I think that we've been influenced by agendas that serve to perpetuate suffering, that serve to perpetuate disharmony, that serve to perpetuate death, disease, and dying. And it is a fact, even scientifically, that only humans are the only animal-eating species that has an extremely short large intestine, the only animal-eating species whose large intestine is so short, whereas all the other animal-eating species have very long, large intestines to process animal meat. And I think that's interesting. And the other thing,
so why were we given canine teeth then?
That's a good question. I never asked, and I would be willing to ask and find, to see what else comes up. But
I would like to know that, because canine teeth, humans are omnivorous, just like a lot of other animals are. Dogs are omnivorous. Bears are omnivorous.
Yeah, even as I'm asking about that, I'm hearing that was an adaptation. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I'm hearing even in this now moment. But usually when I ask for consciousness on things, like higher consciousness, I'm asking for source consciousness, or else I might be asking an animal, what's your perspective? What can you share with us? In the animal kingdom, I might be asking even Mother Earth something. Mother Earth has a consciousness, and she can share that. I'm often asking angels or other guides or, other benevolence who may have crossed over. So when I ask this, I'm just asking right now, what's the highest truth? And what I'm hearing in this now moment is that it was an adaptation. But I do know this, is that, and again, I'm not trying to offer this in a way to sway people. I'm just here to offer other insights. But, other perspectives to help us all expand our consciousness. But what I do know for sure, is that when we eat death and take death into our body, we accelerate our own death because there are death hormones that are secreted and activate death genes. So by eating death, we accelerate our death and we activate death hormones and death genes in our body. That I know. I don't know if it's scientifically studied, but I do know that from consciousness. So
I'm going to agree with you on one point here. When I started going down the road of consciousness and learning my spiritual side, I actually noticed that meat was tasting different. And I can fully admit that. I'm not just saying this because you're the guest on, but I remember Mrs. Spaced Out Radio making dinner, and I would be like, whether it was chicken or beef or, everything but bacon, because I refused to give up bacon. I'm not going to give such a blessing up. But nonetheless, it's the Canadian in me. What can I say? But nonetheless, I can honestly say that it was very, very much noticeable on how meat tasted different when I started going down that spiritual path. So I can recognize and agree with you on that point. Now, did I go vegetarian or vegan? No, I did not. In the end, my canine teeth kind of took over. But I do understand where you're going with that. And to me, it makes sense. It may not make sense to a lot of people, but I understand. And I think that's a point of a good conversation, is having that understandable will. However, it was weird because the more I started going more into the UFO and extraterrestrial side of things with my own, in my own journey, that's where I noticed the whole idea of different tasting meat changed. Yeah.
Well, here's the thing, and I love that you just mentioned that, because I would love to talk more about that, that aspect of, extraterrestrial star family races, etc. And I'll be happy to share even about my own personal induction experience. But what I do know is that we are, as humans, we are a hybridized race. And as a hybridized race, we've taken on DNA and genetics from many star races. And these star races have been influencing us, some of them very benevolently and some of them very malevolently. But we are we're the gene pool. We are the Noah's Ark, so to speak. And that gene pool within us, in addition to all of that, what we have as a human species is lots of implantation that has influenced us and has influenced us so hugely and so massively that we don't know it's influencing us. So a really good example that we can see in our current society that's massively influencing us, for example, is implantation about gender confusion. These gender confusion implants affect people. It's also sometimes referred to as sexual misery implants. Mm-hmm. They create pornography addictions. They create sexual identity confusion, and it's incredibly painful for people. It's not an easy road to be confused about your gender, the identity you belong in, what your sexual orientation is. That all of that confusion, which is now being kind of force-fed to the masses to normalize it, and that's not our natural state of being. There's no wrongness in choosing any consensual sexual partner. The so-called wrongness is the pain and suffering and the confusion associated with it that people are going through. That's what I would call alien implantation, for example. So again, I do believe that eating dead animals is an aspect of that as well. I can talk about some other ones just to help bring to light, because I don't mean to be charged on it. I really mean to just offer consciousness, because I realize these are very charged issues. But, you know, there's other ones. Like, for example, there are a really big one is what we would call crucifixion implants. Crucifixion implants are they carry all kinds of stuff like guilt and shame and this belief system, you know, in being martyrs, and that someone died for us and we have to suffer for this concept that someone died for us. And there's a lot of lies embedded in those kinds of implants. But really what they represent is how we've been disconnected from our Mother Earth. That's the symbology of the feet being sort of cut off. We've been separated from our ability to consciously create, as if our hands are tied. And we've been separated from our source, as if our crown, our higher knowing is disconnected. So these are implants that are affecting us, and we don't even know that they're operating. Just like if you have a virus on your computer, you don't always even know it's there, but it's operating. And until the computer's cleared off, that computer's not working at its ideal and optimal state. So this is part of my role now is to really help people to identify those and to help them clear these things out of their programming so they can be restored. Like when we are restored to our ideal and optimal state of health and well-being and happiness and joy and love and peace, other things don't influence us as much from an unconscious level. We're not as unconscious about these aspects that are operating without our knowing. Does that make sense?
It does. I think it's a lot of heavy topics there that people may not agree with or understand. I mean, when you're getting into the whole implantation thing, I think it's something that is very difficult to say what you said. And, you know, I'm not trying to come across as confrontational here. However, I think when I look at everything, it's confusing. And it's confusing because, you know, your reality and what you have studied is so much different than what mainstream tells us or even my own spirituality tells me. And I'm sure there's a lot of listeners like that as well. But a beautiful part of a program like this is we're allowed to express that. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I just you gave me such a good platform there. I just dove right in. But you're absolutely right. It is. It's definitely deep stuff, and it's not necessarily something everybody, wants to even necessarily look at. So it's a free will choice, and everybody has a right to consider whatever works for them or is right for them to look at.
Let's talk about free will, because I think that's a term that is thrown around quite loosely now.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody seems to be hiding behind the free will comment.
Yeah.
Do you find that as well?
Well, I will share with you my perspective on it, but I can tell you it's another one of those deep sort of perspectives. I don't actually really believe in free will, because ultimately my perspective is that the divine source is orchestrating everything, and that we are the embodiment of that source, that divine source of infinite love, infinite consciousness, infinite presence, infinite awareness, and that divine source is ultimately orchestrating every move. If you think about this, is how I explain it in my classes. If you just even think about your hand, and you tell your hand to pick up a piece of paper or something, pick something up, is the hand free willing it? The hand's not free willing it. You're inspiring the hand to pick something up or to put something down. And that's coming through your consciousness. And that consciousness isn't just a brain saying to do something. There is actually a consciousness that's motivating the brain to have a thought, to fire off a signal through the physiology of the body to take an action. So where is the free will originating? I'm not a believer in free will ultimately. However, I believe that human perspective is that we have a free will.
What about spirits on the other side? Do they have free will?
Well, much in the same way, they're also all ultimately connected to this divine source, aspects of this source, this original source. However we identify that source. To me, that source is infinite love, infinite consciousness, infinite wisdom. That's sort of how I refer to it, and even more, infinite peace, infinite all that is. And its source has willed an experience where it could expand its consciousness, right? So it had to provide an opportunity for this consciousness to expand itself by becoming unconscious of itself. So where is the free will? It created it all, and it allowed for it all. It wrote the script. Mm-hmm. But I do think we believe we have that because we're in this perspective of separation, thinking I'm my own human, and what I do is my choice. So we believe that, and we have that experience. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense, and I understand that. But when it comes to the other side, and I can honestly say, I had an incident at my ghost tour the other night, and I had a local psychic lady cross over a spirit that didn't want to cross, and she used the term free will on me. Now, I was not buying it, and that's why I asked you about that, on whether or not we're using the term free will a little too loosely to kind of get out of things. It's almost kind of like the 90s word bygones, from the old Ally McBeal show.
I remember that.
Like all of a sudden you drop a bygones and everything's supposed to be A-OK.
Yes.
And today it's free will.
When she used that term with you, this psychic who helps this spirit cross, how did she use it? In what capacity? What did she say? I'm just curious.
She said she wanted to go. She had free will, so I sent her.
Okay, so the spirit wanted to go.
No. According to her, yes. According to others that I talked to, because I know that the one spirit that I deal with, she has a boyfriend in her house where she was.
Well, let me elaborate this because I actually just got like a big ping from consciousness that I forgot to say. There is a universe. I don't even know how I didn't say this earlier because it's so part of what I teach. There is a law. There are universal laws. These universal laws are conscious of themselves and they govern our universe. And these laws exist in a non-physical realm. We could call it a sixth-dimensional realm that's beyond where we exist, but they do govern our universe. And one of the first laws of that is the law of intent, consent, and authority, which is also called the law of free will, which does say you as a human being have, and not just a human being, but a spirit, because spirits, non-physical beings, exist on a fourth-dimensional plane. We exist on a third-dimensional plane. Third-dimensional plane is made up of physicality, right? We have height, width, and depth to our bodies. That's a dimension of reality in a sense. Then we have light. We can see different colors and different lights, right? Different gradients of light. That's a dimension of reality. And then we have sound, right? That's a dimension of reality. So those are that's what I call the third dimensional plane. We have those aspects. And the fourth dimension is non-physical. So ghosts, beings who have crossed over, who haven't fully aligned with the divine yet, words, sound, other things that are non-physical exist in that reality. Thoughts, where do your thoughts go? Where do they come from? Where do they pass through? So that's fourth dimension. Well, these laws, these universal laws, they exist on a sixth dimensional plane. And they govern our reality. We just don't know that they're governing us. And they're unbreakable. They are unbreakable laws. They're universal laws. And the first law of, I'm saying it's the first law, it's intent, consent, and authority. So we do have from our, I call it our lower consciousness, our human personality selves, we have an aspect of free will. So when we learn how to harness that, we definitely can use it. Like if you start telling the quantum field and this law, hey, universal law, it's against my free will for chemtrails to continue to exist. Now, if you're in entanglement with that, like resistance, reaction, judgment, you've basically given your energy to the chemtrails in this example. But if you're in a neutral state where you're not entangled with it, you're just like, you know what, this is just not cool. It's not for the greater good. I'm not really in judgment. I understand Creator allowed it. I'm not judging it as wrong, but simply it's not for our highest and best anymore, and I would like the law to honor this request now. Thank you. The law actually does pay attention to your free will consent.
And on that note, I'm going to have to cut you off because we're going to have to go to our first break of the night, a very, very quick first hour with award-winning author Lori Spagna. And I highly suggest you check out her website, lorispagna.com. That's LORISPAGNA.com. We're going to be back with Lori for another 90 minutes right after this on Spaced Out Radio.
Find your escape where time has no limits. It's about living today and cherishing the heritage of yesterday. A spirit of adventure for what is new, with the nostalgia of the past. Your timepiece is a reflection of who you are. Life surrounded by beauty from the world around us to the soul within. EscapeWatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
The freedom to post what you want, when you want. That's the social media freedom you need. Social Media Freedom is the free app in your app store. No need to worry about going to jail or being shadow banned any longer. It's the freedom to say what you feel. The freedom to know Big Brother isn't watching. It's the way social media is supposed to be. Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free. Download from your app store today.
Coming September 28th to the 30th, it's our first annual Caribou Paracon, put on by Spaced Out Radio and the Canadian Society of Questers. 3 days of paranormal, supernatural, and spiritual knowledge in the beautiful 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia. Tickets are $150 Canadian for the event, being held at the Spruce Hills Resort and Spa. Come watch our featured speaker, Grant Cameron, along with Lorian Fenton, David Weatherly, Ross Allison, and more. The Caribou Paracon, celebrating everything paranormal.
Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with U4Cop. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Witkowski's Strange Days.
Hi there, this is Tessa Nicole Thomas, and I'm going to take you for a ride every Sunday night on Spaced Out Sundays. I'm going to set up your week with some strange tales from across North America, from psychic readings, Sasquatch, UFOs, to the most haunted locations. Come join me at spacedoutradio.com starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, and let's get weird together. I'd love for you to join me. Spaced Out Sundays at spacedoutradio.com.
There's news, and there's The Encounter. This is Spaced Out Radio News Director Everett Beamer inviting you to check out The Encounter. Our half-hour news segment every Monday through Friday night is different compared to what you're used to. Our goal is to bring you the weird, strange, and interesting stories the mainstream tends to leave out, and stories that will make you scratch your head in disbelief. The Encounter can also be found at spacedoutradio.com and on our Facebook page, SOR The Encounter. Come give us a read.
We're bringing scientific thought to the paranormal. Hi there, this is Spaced Out Radio scientist Chris Cogswell. Join me, Chris Zuger, and Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month where we break down the who from the woo when it comes to everything paranormal. We'll investigate and try to bring sensible answers to those straight and sometimes outlandish questions people have. Hey, not everything has an answer, but we'll do our best. Listen in to Reality Paranormal only on Spaced Out Radio.
Heading to Vancouver and looking for some great nightlife? The Moose Vancouver is the place to be. Catch a game on one of the big screens or just come rock out to your favorite 80s and 90s hair bands. Great food starting at $6.95. The Moose Vancouver is open until 2 a.m. nightly. It's easy to find near the corner of Nelson and Granville. The Moose Vancouver is the official rocking bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
Do you want to know what's really going on in your world? Do you have questions about who you can trust in the mainstream media? Then look no further than the Rebel Planet. Come get the straight answers right here at spacedoutradio.com. Join me, Jamie Sexton, creator of Rebel Planet News, as I fill you in on the stories behind the stories. All you truth seekers, be sure to tune in to Rebel Planet on spacedoutradio.com the third Thursday of every month.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Hey, this is Canadian Paranormal Investigator Mike Moore. The third Wednesday of every month, I'll be teaming up with Dave Scott to bring you Ghosts of the Great White North. Each month, we will bring on guests from across Canada to discuss their ghostly encounters. Canada is a paranormal hotbed with stories you've never heard, so we're going to bring them to you. So get comfy on your Chesterfield, grab a donut, and join us, eh?
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. And hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag SpacedOutRadio. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Welcome back to hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Thank you so much for being with us. Tomorrow night on the show, Mike Morin comes back for another edition of the Ghosts of the Great White North. We get going at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern at spacedoutradio.com. Hello to everyone listening in on the SOR Radio Network and Deep Talk Radio. Don't forget you could check out all of our archives for free on youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. What the hell is this? Polyubiquitination? Polyubiquitination? Is that even a word, Bill? Seriously. Bill sets the password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you. You can rock out to Bumblefoot, shop at our store, read up on the encounter online, and so much more. And don't forget, you can get tickets for the first annual Caribou Paracon, which happens in just about 12 days, if that. September 28th through 30th. Yeah, it's coming up quick. Brought to you by Spaced Out Radio and the Canadian Society of Questers. Go to questers.ca. That's questers.ca. Click on the fall conference and get your tickets right now. Tonight we are talking with award-winning author Lori Spagna. What a story she has. She is somebody who is a spiritual teacher, ascension guide, multi-dimensional channeling, intuitive, animal communicator. She does it all. Wears a lot of hats. How many hats do you actually wear, Lori?
I don't know. I just really do think that the more we align with Source, we all have the most incredible gifts within us. We have so much access to gifts, talents, and abilities that we can barely. Within us are all of the solutions to the world's problems.
Mm-hmm. I want to ask you. I want to ask you about channeling, because for a lot of people, and I have to admit, I have channeled before, and that's how I ended up starting in this field, because I had a channeling experience. Now, previous to this experience, my idea of channeling was holding a remote control and flipping the channels on the television. But when it does happen, it has a real profound effect on not only your spiritual beliefs, but even you even question your own mentality as to whether or not you're going through this. Talk about channeling and what it means to you.
Well, let me say, first, I did not start off as a channeler. In fact, for years, I would have, benevolent beings come to me, and I had a lot of invitations to allow channeling, and I always would say no, that there's nobody going to channel through me. That just was not going to be okay. And I think that was a necessary step in my early stages, because I really had to develop discernment of what there was, who I was dialoguing with. In fact, in the earlier days, I had a lot of lower dimensional, more fear-based beings come into my so-called my energy field, not in through me, but just to try to interact with me. And I remember in my very early days being like, nope, not interested, only interested in love. Nope, not interested, only interested in the highest love, only interested in benevolent. And so I wouldn't even go for the channeling in the early days. And I didn't even know if I could do it, because I just kind of blocked it out. But what happened was, as I progressed over time, I was so confident that I was so confident in what I was dealing with. I got to the point where I knew what was light and what was there to be of service and what was going to support and assist humanity. And I had worked through so much of that in my own inner path. I'm only interested in that which serves, supports, and assists in the highest and best ways for the highest and greatest good of all, with harm to none. And that's my embodiment. That's all I'm willing to offer. And so that's really, I developed so much discernment over time that then channeling was just like an add-on after a while. It was like, all right, here's this being, why don't I just get out of the way and let it speak through me? Because it's more effortless than me saying, okay, he's saying this, I'm getting this, I'm translating this. It just became so much more effortless to just let it speak. Let it do what it's here to do. So that's how it happened for me.
What's it like, though, to have a spirit come through you and communicate using your voice, your body, your hands?
It's fascinating. It's so fascinating. It's like, I can't tell you, because I'm semi-conscious, so I'm sort of present, but totally altered, and almost like I've sort of surrendered, in a sense, to this consciousness that has something to offer to the group, whoever is with us, and what they're doing and showing, and I can't even begin to explain it. It's fascinating. It's like I'm the witness, in a way, to what they're bringing through. And it's light and wisdom and beautiful, incredible love and joy, and I don't know how to explain it. I don't even know. I can't begin to explain it. All I can say is I have afterwards kind of like seen myself in some of my videos on YouTube doing it, or just after I come out of it, I'm like, well, that was like a circus act. I just think it's funny because it's just, I don't know, it's amazing. What's really amazing is what comes through, though, and how it is true. You're right, what you said. It's very transformational for people because some of the consciousness that comes through, it's not stuff we could know. We wouldn't know it ourselves. It's not anything, a lot of times the things that are coming through, I don't know myself. So that's what's really amazing, right?
Tell us about some of the spirits you have channeled and what their messages are and how those messages come out.
Well, I mean, it sort of depends on who shows up and who's in the group. Whoever's in the group, it's based on what that collective, whether it's a live group or on a webinar type thing, it's based on what that collective needs. So first, I've had a lot of different animal groups come through. Animals will often use me as collectives of what they want to share. I also love when Mother Earth herself comes through. Mother Earth shares what she's going through and what's happening on planet Earth and why we're witnessing a lot of the weather changes and weather patterns and how that's all connected to her clearing process and the evolution of humanity. I get a lot of Mother Earth coming through. I can channel the consciousness of storms, even. So, like, for example, even Florence, which we just had, all of the different, like, major hurricanes, I can easily tap into the consciousness because they're given a name. They have their own consciousness. The angels and archangels, which is a really popular one, I've had them come through. And they're aspects of us, of course. They exist within our reality. So they're here in most of the time really wanting to be of service and also help people to activate parts of our dormant abilities. And then I also have star family races. Oh, ascended masters come through. Of course, ascended masters like, masters like Jesus and Mother Mary and Mary of Magdalene and other kind of lesser known masters. I mean, just the gamut of them come through. And then, of course, Source itself, the highest, clearest, purest consciousness of the original Source, we can access that when we have a clear channel that comes through. And then, of course, our star family races, they love to come through. Because they're star beings who are our family. They are helping us at this time to awaken. And they're sharing consciousness from their perspective to help us evolve and come into a deeper connection with one another, with our heart centers, with love, with service to humanity. So they have a lot to offer from their perspective.
When you are channeling that type of consciousness, how much does it take out of you? Because I know when I channeled, and I know other people who have channeled, it wears you out quick. Like maybe a 20-minute maximum, and you're ready for like a 2-hour nap.
And you know what? That is what's fascinating. I never feel that way. I feel revived. I feel infused with energy because this energy that's coming through is such a high, light, pure frequency. It's lighter than the frequency that my physical embodiment carries and that I think most humans carry. And I think I know that you're right in what you're saying, and I know that that's a true experience for most people because our bodies are so generally so dense, dense, what I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I just mean we're in a third dimensional vibration made up of a really solid kind of physicality. And so that's a lot of work for us to access that light and to channel it through. But for me, I think what's happened for me is I've so cleared my own vessel, my physical vehicle, that when that light comes through, it's actually feeding me. It's fueling me. It's expanding and enlightening me. And so I feel really strengthened by it. I feel elevated by it and expanded by it. and charged with it. It's lovely for me. But I don't think that would have always been my experience, especially if I hadn't done all the pre-work. Like I understand that's not always the case for everybody. I just think that's been my personal experience. Although I get other people have that. Yeah, sorry.
As we move forward, the word ascension means so much in the spiritual realm that I think a lot of people out there, including myself, are a little confused as to what it truly means, because there are so many different definitions to this.
Yeah. Well, my definition that I would share is that it's a process that is happening globally. It's happening on every area of our reality. It's happening financially. It's happening economically. I mean, that's sort of the same. It's happening geographically. It's happening to us on a personal level, emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually. It's happening culturally. It's happening in our government, all of our world governments. It's happening in our school system, in our medical systems. So to me, ascension is really a significant blip in terms of linear time, our experience, where humanity is evolving. And this evolution that we're all going through, personally and collectively, is so massive and so significant. It's requiring us to level up out of this what I call third dimensional consciousness. I know I'm not the only one who calls it that, we already explained that, right? Based on just physicality and separation. I'm separate from you, you're separate from me, the United States is separate from Russia, England is separate from, Germans are separate from Italians, on and on and on. Everyone's separate and no one's connected, and what I do over here has nothing to do with you over there. Like, that's third dimensional consciousness. And by the way, third dimensional consciousness is basically a consciousness where fear, dominance, and a hierarchical, linear kind of approach exists. Basically fear, dominance, control, worry, anxiety, debt, lack, limitation. Those things are abundant in the third dimensional structure where we've been existing. Well, ascension is the process where we kind of elevate ourselves out of that reality, individually and collectively, and across all of our systems, and we up-level into a whole new way of existing and being. And we create new systems that are based on for the greater good of all, and ideally with harm to none, to the best of our ability. And where we understand we're all connected, and that we're all in this together, and that this new dimension of reality, we sort of shift through what I call fourth dimension, where we understand there is a non-physical realm, and we are connected to it, and we are aspects of it, and we can work with it. And then we sort of level up into this fifth dimensional realm, which is where we're all connected. We're all part of this source, and we have access to this source. And as we awaken to this source, we can share these gifts of this source with one another and create a whole new reality. And I think that's really just beginning, just starting on Earth. And that, to me, that's what ascension is.
I want to ask you about source. All right, because for a lot of people, they have a very tough time trying to figure out what this source is. Most of us have been brought up with God or a godlike deity that we are to, pray to think of as our creator. Yet those who are in the spiritual really go to source or source energy, whatever you want to call it. What is the difference between God and source?
Yeah, well, I think the word God itself means something different to everybody. And it's often linked to organized religion of some kind or another, whichever religion. We have different words for what God is, and we have different belief systems regarding what God is, depending on our spiritual beliefs, but that's often linked into religion. And there's a lot of dogma in that. Even if you're a scientist and you're an atheist, well, your religion is science. You know, you give over all your power to the science. So to me, that's all third-dimensional consciousness, because most of it is you don't necessarily know, or you're taking, it's not always the case, but often is the case, that we're taking on what we're taught by some other being in the physical world. Like if we go to a religion and church, or that, you know, priest teaches us what God is, but it's not a direct experience necessarily. It could be, of course it could be, because many people in organized religions are having direct experience, because source, whether we call it God or whether we call it source, whether we call it Jesus or Buddha or Gandhi, whatever we call it, there is a source, and it will come to us and work with us, and we can align with it. And we are the embodiment of it. We are aspects of it. So I use the word source because I want to be, in my choice, it's sort of free of the dogma, free of some other person or ideology or structure or system that tells me what it is. I go straight to the source, the original source. And to me, that's how I access it. And I know we all have a right to see or perceive or understand that however we choose. But from my perspective and my alignment with it, it's love. It's not like a Santa Claus in the sky. It's love. It is a frequency that vibrates energetically. It's fully and completely and wholly conscious. And yet it doesn't exist in any sort of limitation. It's all that is. It's everything, everywhere, limitless, infinite source of consciousness. And yet that energy vibrates to a frequency of love and peace.
So where does spirit and or reincarnation play in that?
Well, reincarnation plays into that if you're a soul, we are all souls embodied, right? And we exist for a linear period of time in a physical form. And this is a limited period of time in a physical form right now, right? Because humans have an earth, and even animals. So let's say in your physical experience, you complete your life journey and you still feel some way, shape, or form like there's regret. Every time someone goes, I wish I had done that. If I did it again, I'd do this differently. If only I did that. We're creating our own reincarnation experience, even in life, by having those kinds of like regrets. Or sometimes there's a lot of times when people cross, in their last end of days in their physical form, they have deathbed wishes, like, I wish I did that, I wish I did that. That creates a reincarnation experience. So the person or animal crosses over, enters into a non-physical fourth dimensional realm, has a life review of sorts, gets to review, make new choices. Now, I'll throw in a little hook into this, which is that prior to 2012, that those life choices were being influenced. There were influences. But now there's a whole new, we've sort of been liberated, in a sense, from this matrix of unconsciousness, we'll call it that for now, where we're getting to become conscious again. That's why we have radio shows like yours helping to expand that. So now you cross over, you can have a whole new choice. You can choose things you never even knew were possible. Oh, I think I'd like to live on another star. I think I'd like to go live in another planetary system. I'd like to choose something entirely new. But we didn't always have that necessarily. And so we would recreate and say, I'll redo it. And then re-embody again. Be born at some future point in linear time as a new being. But here's the thing about reincarnation. Can I say a little more?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Is that if we carried traumas or dramas or entanglements or pain, suffering, things that were unresolved, like emotional baggage, mental baggage, any kind of traumatic experience, those energetic imprints, they make an imprint on us. And even though we drop the body, the imprint is still there in your energetic field, so to speak. In the time you reincarnate again, you're still carrying that. You're going to work through it again in the next lifetime. So really, most of the things you're living through right now, you have lived through in some other lifetime.
Right.
That's just
so
a
to
parallel
you then,
existence.
to you then, Lori, what is spirit? What is that? Is it sitting in the soul inside the body the way we are taught? Is it an enlightenment inside of us? What is it?
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on how you define spirit, because some people, when they refer to spirit, they mean God. They mean the divine. But we each are a spirit. We are all spirits embodied, because we're not just a brain we're not just robots here that a brain fires off motor neurons and then those brain, stimulates the rest of, the nervous system and the circulatory system, and things are just moving. We're actually a spirit that's embodying a physical form. And this spirit that we each are as unique individuals is an aspect of that whole divine source. We're aspect of source embodied. And to me, that's what the spirit is. That's how I refer to spirit. We are spirits embodied. But we could use lots of ways to define ourselves, right? We are God's embodied. We are divine love embodied. We are ascended masters who have descended into physical form. That's another way to describe it.
So what are we trying to ascend to then?
I think that what we're all trying to do is come home to recognizing ourselves as love, as the divine source in physical form. But some people, that's just not part of their journey. They're still just choosing to have a physical experience absent of their own consciousness, conscious connection with source. And that's okay, right? If they're choosing that, they're choosing maybe atheism in that case, or maybe they're choosing some other kind of unconscious type of experience, which doesn't make it wrong or bad. It just means that's the choice that their unique soul is here to work through or to resolve. Maybe they have things from other parallel existences that they're here working through. And if that's the case, whatever it is fine. But nonetheless, I think that we're all trying to remember ourselves as love and restoring that knowing within us. And then whatever knowing that we have, whatever, not just knowing from the left brain, but knowing from the right brain and knowing from the heart center and from our gut, just our belly also has a brain, like full body, holistic knowing, embodiment of ourselves as love, as consciousness, and then offering that to the rest of the world to alleviate suffering and to expand consciousness.
How do we get there, though? As in, but I mean that as a serious question. How do we get there? Because everybody lives for the moment these days. The news is for the moment. Social media is for the moment. Everything is for the moment, where we barely have time to take a high-quality bathroom break or a long shower, let alone try to find our inner selves. That's a big commitment.
It's not, I guess from my perspective, I have a perspective that it's already done. From my perspective, humanity is already doing it. We're already in the process. And I don't see it as dire as I know a lot of other people, maybe they do, because I have a perspective from I sort of see it like, I'm on the other side of the tunnel, you guys, and we're all here. So how do we do it? First, we have to make a choice that we really want to become the best version of ourselves. And we have to decide that we're worth it and that humanity's worth it. And that we want to really do the inner searching, because there is an inner search in it. Like, who am I? What am I here for? We have to do that, asking those questions. But, you're asking. And we have to make choices that are aligned with our highest and best. And we have to sort of make choices to like one of the things I always say is, the news is not news anymore. It's just propaganda. Turn off the news, third-dimensional news, We have to decide that violence is not entertainment. It's programming for more violence, for the perpetuation of violence.
What about hockey? Hold on. Now you're getting into my realm here. What about hockey?
That's a game. You're playing. Those are games.
All right.
I mean, look.
I'll be honest with you. I broke my nose a couple of times in a couple of really good hockey fights. I'm okay with that on the ice.
All right. Well, I will say this. There is we want to go back to programming of the unconscious. There's divide and conquer. Divide and conquer is, I'm on one side and you're on the other side, and I have to conquer you. Each side's trying to conquer the other. Democrats, Republicans, divide and conquer. Whites and blacks, divide and conquer. Women and men, divide and conquer. You can go through this whole idea of just one side versus Russia and the United States, divide and conquer. And you even have it in sports, divide and conquer. But at the same time, we're not meant to relinquish our joy, the things that are fun for us. If you love playing a sport that's really fun for you, and it's exercising your physical body, and it's bringing joy to spectators, there's not a wrongness in that. The wrongness is more like, just, not that there is a wrongness, but that perspective of somehow I have to beat someone up and they're bad because they're on another side. The idea is the camaraderie, the joy, the fun of the game. If we're doing it that way, hockey's great, hockey and every other game. But it's really about our perspective and how we play the game, so to speak.
Well, as long as we cleared that up, because I thought I was going to have to, I honestly thought I was going to have to end the interview right there because of the bacon shot in hour one and now a shot at hockey number two. This isn't sitting well for us Canadians here.
Oh, my goodness. I apologize. No, I really think we're not meant to lose our joy. In fact, we're meant to expand our joy. We are. We're meant to celebrate the things that make us happy and fulfilled and that excite us and that inspire us. And if sports is your thing, then have at it, enjoy life. I always say, if you're not happy, you're not helping. It's not about, this isn't supposed to be a game of suffering. This is supposed to be a game of joy and enjoyment and, camaraderie and play and fun. And yes, I mean, there's other things that come into that, but sports are, a way that people really also get to exercise their bodies and use their physical form, and that's all good. Oh, that's good.
So back to the whole Ascension comment in regards to how we get there. With society being the way it is, how do you recommend people to slow down, find that time in order to find their higher selves?
Yeah. Okay, well, number one of the first things you need to do is take some time for you. Whoever you are, whatever it is you like, there have to be some times where you unplug. And if your form of unplugging is a hockey game, if that is your joy, then that's awesome. But every person needs to be able to slow down and breathe without mental chatter and mental interference of TVs and internet and Facebook and, whatever else it is that may be energetically interfering with our own inner peace, right? Our own inner, breath. Because that's the first step, is when you start just quieting yourself. And this doesn't mean you have to get into a silent mind of meditation necessarily, although that's certainly advised. But that's not the first step. The first step is just recognizing you deserve some time to sit still and breathe and relax without all the external stimuli. Because all that external stimuli is just, it's just charging, it's just wiring you into this kind of wired state of being. So, even in my classes, I encourage people to take egg timers out and sit in silence at first for only a minute and refuse to get up for anything and just breathe, just deep breaths like that originate from the belly. When you start doing even that as a regular practice, taking time to just stop, be silent, and breathe, that's a good first step. It's a really good first step. Because always when we take the first step, the next steps are revealed,
how does it affect one's mentality and physicality when you start taking those steps?
Well, first of all, the moment you start taking any first step, everything starts changing, because this is the way universal laws work. Like, every first step leads to a second step. And if your first step is done with any kind of conscious intention, like, I'm going to choose to start caring for me, I'm going to start choosing that I am worthy and deserving of. Like, one of the things I also tell my clients, this is such a simple little thing, but go to your calendar, even if it's an online calendar, and X off one evening that you put in a block, or one afternoon, or just, even if maybe for you might think it's only 1 hour a week, but you put a block in there, like, and you block it off. Nothing can be scheduled on that during that time, that it's your time, and that you will not let anything interfere with it. You won't book anything, you won't schedule anything. And during that time, it's entirely for you. If you want to sit and twiddle your fingers in a corner, that's fine. And this is a way of self-honoring and self-care and realizing your life has value and you matter and you have a right to do whatever you want as long as it harms no one else. And this is a way to demonstrate that to yourself. Now, when you do that, you're reclaiming yourself. You're reclaiming a part of your own sovereignty. You're reclaiming a piece of your own. You're liberating yourself from the rat race of this human construct of, got to make money, got to do this, got to do, got to be here, got to do that. And you're reclaiming what's rightfully yours, which is a piece of your own personal space, your own liberation, your own freedom. And even if it's only an hour a week, if you're breathing, if you're doing something you love, whatever it is, that love will be restored within you. And it'll grow from there.
Is it something that you need help with? Should you have a guru or a mentor who walks you through this?
Well, first of all, let me say that, in my opinion, anyone who says they're a guru, you should avoid. Because the guru is you. You are your own guru. But yes, I agree that we need sometimes mentors, or sometimes we need people who are, our cheerleaders or our coaches or our healers or our guides to help us, because we can't always see our own blind spots and we don't always know what the right next step is. We just have to know that person understands they are there for us, for our highest and best, and that their job while they're working for us is to serve us in the highest and best ways. And if they don't know that, if they've got some personal agenda, that's maybe not the right person. I'm not a big fan of the term guru anymore, because I think we're meant to come into our own power and to really recognize ourselves as the source embodied. So, but yeah, I mean, it's always wonderful to have someone there supporting you, assisting you. And I still work with someone who's third party neutral in my life to be there for me, on a weekly basis. And I do encourage that.
We also encourage the term peak woo around here instead of woo woo.
I like that.
Peak woo is pretty serious stuff around these parts. And I understand that people can get taken advantage of pretty easily around here, especially when they are on the lookout for something more in their life and they do not know how to get there. And I think there's a real danger to that, because a lot of people can be either given the wrong advice or taken advantage of financially and emotionally. And that is a scary, scary prospect for a lot of people to go through. So how do you tell people, or how do you teach people to choose the path they are going on and how to get there? How do you work with them?
Yeah, this is awesome. Well, first, for people who are concerned about that, first, there's two things I want to say on this. Number one, if you're working with a person or you're aware of someone who is somehow trying to pull something out of you or get something from you, or in any way, shape, or form makes you feel diminished or small, or inspires fear in you, that is not the right person. if somehow you feel contracted, constricted, stressed out in some form of tightness or anxiety at the thought of working with them or at what they're telling you need to do, almost every time that will not be the right person for you. The only time a contraction or a constriction might come up, that where it might be for you, is if it's asking you to become greater than you already are. In which case, if that person is expanding you into something more, if it's opening you up to something more, if it's inspiring you, if it's making you be aware of something greater than you've currently or previously been aware of, if it feels lighter, brighter, more optimistic, that's something to move towards. And also recognize you're always free to make a new choice, even if the choice that you previously made might not have been the highest and best. So that's the first thing to say. Generally speaking, if it's uplifting, expanding, opening, lightening lightening you up, that's a yes, right? Yes, if it feels good and right, with harm to none, that's a move toward, right? That's your energetic, like moving you towards something. So that's the first thing. Second thing is, before you engage with somebody, even if it's a doctor, even if it's a Western lawyer, you still have to be careful of, is this person really going to help me in the highest and best ways? Is this person or this choice that I'm going to make? And if you have that within your awareness, that you can ask that. You can say even a simple prayer like, all right, whoever your God or deity or source or spirit or your own high self, higher knowing or gut instinct, whatever it is that you can align with, if you just sort of access that part of you, even if it's your gut, and you're like, okay, I think I'm going to move in this direction with this person or make this choice, whatever it is. And if this is right for me, let it happen. And if it's not, somehow block it in a way that's benevolent. So I don't choose it. And if you just say that even to your own self, you will be amazed. When it's right, the door will kind of open. It'll become effortless in a way. And if it's not, it'll sort of fall off your radar or somehow won't work. Or the house that you almost bought will be sold, or the doctor that you almost went to will be booked, or that lawyer will be arrested, or you know what I mean, that kind of thing. It's like we are having to trust our own inner knowing on these things, and that's part of becoming more conscious. And so if you use those two tools, that's part of even developing your own discernment, because, yeah, within you do know. You will have that knowing. If you trust it, you start to work with it.
Does everybody know how to recognize that, though?
I don't think everybody knows yet, but I think that's part of developing discernment.
So that's the journey. Again, that's the journey.
Yeah, that's part of the journey, right? I mean, we all have to develop discernment. That's why this whole thing about, like, fake news, the whole idea of fake news is like, you don't know what to trust anymore. Well, how could you know what to trust if somebody with an agenda doesn't want you to believe the truth, or someone else with another agenda doesn't want you to know what they know? Or, it's like they introduce these concepts that inspire doubt and make us doubt ourselves. And then there's things like, who can you trust, and all that kind of stuff. So it's up to us to develop our own discernment. And again, the way to develop your discernment is to know that if something's feeling inspiring, uplifting, enlightening for you, expansive, overall, generally good, benevolent, that's going to be a good direction to move in. If it's feeling tense, restricted, fearful, binding, stressful, anxietyful, fearful, it's generally a no. Move away from that.
I still think a lot of people will struggle with that, because even when they do get in contact with their higher self, a lot of people, Lori, are not going to believe what they are actually hearing, seeing, feeling.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big transition for people. That is a huge transition for people if they do not understand the results of what is coming.
Yeah, I mean, I get that it does take some practice, but I can almost promise people that if you practice it a little bit before you know it, like very quickly, it will become more obvious because you'll see, you start to practice like, oh, I'll give you a really good example of something that happened to me very early on. I remember I was living in Maui and I was getting my first house there, like rental, and this house that I wanted for 3 or 4 times, like the landlord was like, I can't have you move in yet. It's not ready. And then, it was like, it just wasn't working out. And it kept blocking, like it just wasn't working. And finally, I just exerted my will, and I was like, I'm going to make this happen. I don't care. I'm going to make it happen. I kind of used some force. I was like, I'm ready to move in. Here's some money. And it just was I had to get out of the house really fast. It was not right. And it took a long time, not a long time, a few months later before I realized, I didn't follow my own guidance on that, my own knowing. I was being blocked from something that wasn't for my highest and best, and I tried to push through it, and that was a learning lesson for me. So even though it was, in a way, a mistake, it ended up serving me because I learned from it. So even if we make a mistake, you end up seeing like, that didn't work so well. And if you pay attention to your thoughts and your choices, this is the thing where you have to start paying attention with more consciousness, more awareness. What led me to this experience? Because if we do pay attention, we'll see the ones that are effortless, the ones that we love the most, the ones that we enjoy the most, those are the ones we're meant to do. And the ones that are the hardest, the most difficult, the biggest struggle, the greatest challenges, those are the ones that are really sort of, our own guidance is like, don't go that way.
See, I look at that and I think when I look at the consciousness level of it all, I look at it as seeing from my own personal view where I struggled with it. I fought it every step of the way. There were certain things I didn't want to give up. There were certain things I did not want to go through because I thought it was absolutely irrelevant. How do you take the judgment out of everything and just go with the flow and, basically be like a mop and just soak it up?
Well, let me say, I've also gone through many struggles too, so I totally understand what you're saying. But I will say for me, what's happened, the part of me that's a healer, I call myself a healer, but really I'm just a facilitator for Source to do its work, right? But what I've learned is that when I go to Source and I'm like, okay, how is this serving me? What are the gifts here? What is it I'm not seeing that I'm meant to see? What is it I'm not understanding that I'm meant to understand? Bring this into my consciousness with clarity. Like I just recognize, okay, somehow I'm blocked. I'm struggling. What's going on? What is it that I'm not getting? What is it that I'm not aware of? That alone really, again, asking that question and just not trying to answer it, it reveals it to me. I start to know. Oh, yeah, I get what I didn't get. Like, I'll give you another personal example of this. Do we have another? Can I share about this for a moment?
Go right ahead.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Over the summer, I was having some real family challenges and sibling challenges, and I have had some sibling challenges with my sister for most of my life, and it's been excruciatingly painful for me because I have always loved my sister so much and wanted a close relationship, and there was that kind of some of that sibling stuff. And I was just in so much pain over something that had happened over the summer. I just did this kind of screaming sort of prayer, not really prayer, but kind of what is it that I am missing? Please, what can you share with me, expand into my consciousness that will finally help me to know what it is that I'm missing? What is it that I'm just not getting? And it was within less than that same night, by that evening, I got it. It was like the big aha that came in that I just never realized about my relationship with my sister that finally made all the pain go away. I totally got it. I completely understood. And the struggle of the relationship was just, for me, immediately evaporated. And this is a lifetime of struggle. So this is what I'm saying is we just don't know that we have access, even just by asking a question and kind of like just letting ourselves not try to answer, just asking for what we need in terms of awareness. Help me understand. What is it I don't get? What is it I'm missing here? And sometimes that's all we need to do. There's an element of trusting. Okay, I don't know what the answer is. I'm not getting it this instant, but I've just posed the question. I'm going to leave it at that and let this question be answered for me.
Letting go, though, is so tough. We have a tough enough, but in reality, as we got about 5 minutes before we got to go to break here, letting go of anything, whether it's a person, a pet, a life, that we suffer from because we're going to miss people, or even material things, whether it's a car, a watch, a hat, a necklace. We have troubles letting go. We're hoarders.
Yeah.
We are complete hoarders.
This is the thing, Dave. It really is true. Attachment is the root of all suffering. Because our attachment is what creates the suffering. And letting go is, in and of itself, a massive lesson. Yeah, you're right. We have to learn to let go. And I'll say the staff, in the letting go and the release, there is tremendous relief. And if we understand that when we let go of one thing, we make space for something better. If we could really embody that, letting go would be much easier.
And for some, they're not going to be able to do it. I mean, never mind the material things. I mean, just look at grudges. We all hold grudges. That's negative energy, because doesn't it all come down to anything you're holding on to? It is a negative energy, whether it's materials, whether it's, you're upset with somebody and you're not finding any resolve. That negative energy weighs you down. It's like carrying a ball and chain on your leg.
Yes. Well, that's forgiveness. That's a whole other topic, and I know we have to go to break. Forgiveness is liberation. Forgiveness is freedom. Forgiveness is the gift we give ourselves as an act of self-love. So to forgive is its own form of letting go. You're right.
So why is it so hard to do? Why are we addicted to holding the grudge, which keeps us down spiritually?
Because we're energetically entangled with our own pain, but forgiveness is what liberates us from the pain. The best way to do forgiveness is in meditation, because you're already in an elevated state, and then forgiveness is easy. But because humans don't engage in meditation very often, they get entangled energetically with the pain of the harm, of the wrongdoing, or whatever it is, and they're not realizing that experience has actually got gifts there, gifts for them waiting, gifts that will help them, but they can only receive those gifts through the disentanglement, which is forgiveness. They have to forgive. Mm-hmm. So I can tell you, at the root of every disease is a call for forgiveness.
Right. I like Jeff's comment here on Twitter at #SpacedOutRadio. He says, what you hold on to is what holds you back.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Lori, I want to get in a quick question here from our audience and members in the Revolution Radio chat room. And they are asking, what do you know about cloud whispering?
Oh, that's such a fun topic. Well, how much time do we have?
Well, we got about 2 minutes, and we can carry it over through the break.
Let me say, cloud whispering is so fun. If you really, what it is you're looking up at the clouds, at the sky, and some people just look for something that's symbolic to them. They might see something in the clouds, but in reality, you can also ask the consciousness of the skies or the clouds or even source or any elevated, even your own high self, to reveal to you any information, or you can ask direct questions, and you can ask it to be revealed in the clouds, in the formation of the clouds. You will be amazed. The clouds are conscious too, and they're a formation of of your own consciousness reflecting at you. So you can get incredible wisdom through the clouds. And, of course, beings can project themselves. So there's lots of pictures and images of, ascended masters, Kuan Yin, Jesus, other beings that form through the clouds because they can do that. So this is just touching on the concept, the concept of cloud whispering, but it's using consciousness to dialogue with the clouds and to receive expanded awareness and connection. It's fun.
Is it
really
not
fun.
just, though, when people are seeing things in the clouds, though, the mind scientifically tries to recognize absolutely everything on this planet. So how do we know we're actually looking at beings up in the clouds comparatively to just pareidolia?
Well, I mean, the mind does do that stuff. That is true. That's not untrue. But again, with all of this kind of stuff, this esoteric stuff, what happens is as you practice it, you shift from believing and perceiving to knowing. You start to have experiences that when you have direct experience, nothing can take that away. Nothing can tell you that you saw something in there that you know. Because the way the experience happened, you know it's real, and now you're no longer a believer, you're a knower. That's all I can say is you have to shift from, playing. Yeah.
On that note, I'm going to hop out here for our final break of the night. We can continue the cloud talk right after this because I think that's going to be an interesting topic. Lori Spagna is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. We are talking ascension, consciousness, everything to do with the spiritual aspect of life. We got her for another 30 minutes here on Spaced Out Radio. Lori's website, LoriSpagna.com. That's L-O-R-I, Lori, L-O-R-I, Spagna, S-P-A-G-N-A.com. LoriSpagna.com. Make sure you check it out and all her books on Amazon as well. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. We'll be back with the final hour right after this.
Are you tired of being blocked, shadow banned, or placed in jail for simply posting your thoughts on social media? Social Media Freedom can take care of that for you. Social Media Freedom is the newest and one of the best free new apps that allows you the freedom to post what you want, when you want. It takes seconds to download from your app store. Come join the tribe at Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free.
The first annual Caribou Paracon is happening September 28th to 30th in the 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia. Brought to you by the Canadian Society of Questers and Spaced Out Radio. Come listen to our featured speaker, Grant Cameron, along with Elizabeth Anglin, Paisley Town, Mike Moran, Eric Cooper, and more. It's a 3-day supernatural adventure at the Spruce Hills Resort and Spa. Tickets for the weekend are $150 Canadian. The Caribou Paracon, celebrating everything paranormal.
A timepiece is a reflection of who you are, and what better way to show off the real you than with an Escape watch? Escape is a lifestyle brand accessorizing your days and nights. Choose to escape and create the life of discovery that you deserve. Dream, play, unite with your own personalized Escape watch. Head to escapewatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
Find yourself constantly looking up in the sky, looking for answers? Have you had extraterrestrial contact? Are you an abductee? Looking for answers to your experiences? Hi there, I'm R. Keith Andrews, Spaced Out Radio's resident ET expert. Join me live the first Friday of every month where I take questions from the Spaced Out Radio chat room and help you understand those from the far-off world. It's 2 hours of knowledge every experiencer should listen to. Hope to see you there.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now. The Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
The Call of the Wild is in Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver is one of the hottest bars and restaurants in the city. Open until 2 a.m. nightly, the Moose will rock you like a hurricane all night long. Great food with everything on the menu at $6.95 near the corner of Nelson and Granville. Get your horns up and come rock with us. The Moose Vancouver, the official rocking bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Are you an experiencer? Have you had run-ins with strange creatures you can't explain? ETs, Dogman, Bigfoot, werewolves? They're enough to scare the daylights out of anyone. Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski from your 4-Cop. And on the last Monday of every month, you can listen to me and the host, Dave Scott, talk about the weird and the strange being reported on Spaced Out Radio. I'm going to bring my investigations and sources, you bring your experiences, and we'll figure out the rest together. Strange Days on Spaced Out Radio. Come tune us in at spacedoutradio.com.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
You know, it's hard being the bad man of ufology, but that's just the way that I like it. This is Chris George Zuger, and I'll be hanging out with Dave Scott and SOR scientist Chris Cogswell for Reality Paranormal, the second Wednesday of every month. And our job is to break it down and come to conclusions as to what is really going on in the supernatural world. I'd love for you to join us and bring your questions for us to investigate right here on Spaced Out Radio.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
When it comes to the news, we look for the stories that the mainstream won't cover. Welcome to Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter. This is News Director Everett Thiemer. The Encounter is about the weird and strange stories that occur daily, and we scour the world looking to bring them to you. You can hear me with Dave Scott every Monday through Friday in our Encounter news segment. Read us online at spacedoutradio.com or check us out and give our Facebook page a like at SOR The Encounter. So come give The Encounter a read.
From the mile-high state of Colorado, sharing our signal around the world, I invite you to Spaced Out Sundays. Hi, I'm Tessa Nicole Thomas, and I'm closing out the week by taking you on a paranormal journey to the world of the weird. Ghosts, aliens, psychic phenomena, I will hit it all in your questions too. So let us highlight the paranormal for you. So come join me for Spaced Out Sundays starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, 12 a.m. Eastern, only at spacedoutradio.com.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and hashtag Spaced Out Radio, and on Facebook Spaced Out Radio Show. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back to the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Thank you so much for being with us. Tomorrow night on the show, we get back to Ghosts of the Great White North. We'll be joined by Mike Morin from Haunted Crew of Canada. We get going at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern at spacedoutradio.com. We say hello to everyone listening in on Deep Talk Radio and the SOR Radio Network. Don't forget, all of our archives are free on our YouTube channel. Go to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight. in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Polyubiquination. Polyubiquination. I think that's it. I don't know. But Bill sets the password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you. You can rock out to Bumblefoot, shop at our store, read up on the encounter online, and so much more. And don't forget, time is winding down to get your tickets for the first annual Caribou Paracon, presented by Spaced Out Radio and the Canadian Society of Questers. September 28th through 30th. Grant Cameron, David Weatherly, Ross Allison, so many more great names coming up here to speak for you. And we definitely want to take you on a real paranormal journey that weekend. So go get your tickets at questers.ca. That's questers.ca, and come hang out with us in beautiful 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia at the Spruce Hill Resort and Spa. For the final time tonight, we introduce our guest, Lori Spagna. LoriSpagna.com is her website. We've been talking about Ascension, channeling, intuition, animal communication, energy healing, light work, clouds, and so much more. Lori, it's been a real pleasure to have you on the show tonight. Thank you so much.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm really enjoying myself.
We're having a lot of fun here, too. Right before the break, we were talking about clouds, where a lot of people will see beings in the sky in formations of clouds. There's been some really, really cool effects that Mother Nature has provided for us. Yet, for a lot of people, it's about pareidolia as well. I mean, who hasn't laid in their backyard on a nice, sun and cloud day and tried to pick out shapes of clouds, whether they're dinosaurs or animals of some sort or airplanes. It could be absolutely anything. How do we define the difference between what is pareidolia and what is a true sign from either Mother Nature or Source, God, whatever it may be?
Well, you know what? You want to know what really is the difference. It depends on the individual and what they're asking for. Because if you're just thinking you're going to just look up at the clouds and just see if you see, a shape, and it's innocent fun and play, it's not like you're necessarily invoking some kind of higher consciousness to come through and connect with you. But if you are a being who really wants to wake up to understanding more about the non-physical realm, and your sincere desire is there, and you ask not from a place of judgment or doubt or disbelief, but rather from a sincere request to just make a true, real, and authentic connection. And you're not attached, just again, that attachment to the specifics of, exactly how or when, and you're just working with it. That's kind of how it comes through. It comes through more from a place of willingness and desire. But if you're just having fun looking at the clouds and wanting to find shapes and things, that will happen too. But the truth is, you're always creating it. We're always creating our reality. And what's going on in our reality is stuff that we've called force into it. Whether we know that or not, whether we believe it or not, that is true.
So what is up there?
Can I share one other? One thing that people will love to do? It's really fun, and I teach this in my Psychic 1 class. It's a very basic, easy, fun thing you can do. So on any day where, there's got generally clear skies, more or less, you can lay outside on the earth, lay down flat on the earth, and you look up into the sky, and you allow your eyes to sort of, go to your periphery vision. You sort of relax your eyes so you're not using your direct focus. And you allow yourself to see what science calls electromagnetic particles of light with innate intelligence. What you'll see with your periphery when you sort of relax your eyes is you will see bouncing light, little particles of light bouncing around, and the more you allow yourself to see them, the more of them you will see. And basically, we could refer to these as light beings, because just even as science says, they are electromagnetic particles of light with innate intelligence. Well, another word for that is light beings. Another word for that could be angels. It doesn't really matter. Potato, potato. They're real. They exist, and you can see them. And it's a fun game. It's fun. lay on the earth and just practice and see. It's sort of in that same genre as, cloud spotting, cloud hopping, so to speak.
It is weird to me, and I'm going to be absolutely honest. It is weird to me because, maybe I look at things a little bit too rational, at least in my mind, but I just really, really try to look at things as practical, and the clouds are one of them. Like I have a friend of mine, Patrick, who claims that there's aliens hiding in the clouds. I don't see it yet. Yet my wife
sort
does.
Of round spaceship looking. Yeah, those are the round clouds that almost do look like spaceships. And there is a lot of evidence that is true. But I understand not everybody necessarily believes. And one thing I do know is that benevolent star family races, which I don't call them so much ETs or aliens, because of my direct interaction with them, they refer to themselves as our star family, and we're their star family. But nonetheless, they exist and they interact with those who are really heart-centered and really want to know them. And so it's quite easy to see their spaceships when you're coming from that perspective. Like, I'm just really heart-centered. I want to connect with my star family. I'd like to know you as long as you're benevolent and loving. And I'd like to be benevolent and loving and know you better. You will have direct experience with them. Maybe not the first time you ask. It might take, some really demonstration that you also have only benevolent intentions. But they're there, and many times they do hide in clouds. But there's some truth to that.
Speaking of which, you had mentioned that you have had an ET abduction as well. How did that affect you?
Yeah, well, that was huge. So what would happen was, while I was living in Maui, I was there for 2 years. I almost had very little to no human contact while I was there. I lived on a golf course in Pukalani, and every night, basically at that time, this was like 15 years ago or something like that, Hawaii, basically that island, after 9 o'clock, nothing was going on. So I was still awake, and I would sit on the back porch at the end of the night just looking up at the sky. And this is prior to way before 2012, and I was basically under this misguided impression that there were going to be ETs here to help us. And I mean, not that that's not true. That is true. But I didn't know anything else at that time. So I would just stare up, and I wanted to see them. And it was amazing that I actually did see these things that looked like stars. I'm not saying that's what they always look like, but in this case, and they would make little circles. And I worked for a cable company for many years. I know what satellites look like. It was not a satellite. And after 12 o'clock at night, there's no planes at that time above Maui. Like, the airport's closed at 10 o'clock. And this was definitely a circular movement that seemed to respond directly to my engagement with it. And I remember this happened more than one night, and I would just sort of telepathically, without really entirely knowing that's what I was doing, say, well, if there's anything I can do to help, I'd be happy to help. I just didn't know what I was doing. But nonetheless, after a few nights of this, more than one night, certainly more than several nights, I remember being transported, energetically transported. This was not a dream. This was not a hallucination. I was not meditating. I could not believe what was happening to me, but all of a sudden I was just, for lack of a better word, beamed onto the ship. And I found myself in this room. I'm in this room, and there's cameras everywhere, and I'm being kind of observed, but I had free will. Like, I could get up and move. So I was able to move around on the ship. I'd walk up to a door, and just sort of like on Star Trek, a door would just open when I stood in front of it. And I remember walking down this corridor, and there were a lot of cameras in a room watching everything, and I was able to get into this sort of stadium. There was like a stadium on it, and I was greeted by this woman who appeared to be like a human being, but I knew she was not human. And she said, and I asked her, what is this stadium? She said, this is where our children are. This is where all of our children are. And at one point she asked me, can I implant you? She didn't use that word. Can I put this in you, this tracking, so we can keep track of you because you're our child. You're one of our children. And I allowed it, but I really didn't like it at all. And I remember at a certain point there was information exchanged that I didn't understand at the time. I remember at a certain point saying, I want to go home, at which point I was immediately shown like an elevator of sorts. The door opened like a sliding door in that moment that I asked to go home, thinking it was Earth was my home. And I was immediately teletransported back into my home. And it was so freaky that I could not process it at that time. And I remember going to sleep and the next morning waking up like, what the heck happened to me? What was that? And there was a long period of time after that where every evening I wouldn't sleep. I was always meditating myself to sleep during that time and now meditating through the night. But I would have these kinds of what I call downloads, like going across my brain of patterns of sacred geometry, if you're familiar with that, like geometrical patterns across my brain and waves and energies and frequencies. And I didn't understand. I would ask every day, like, what is this? And I would always be told, and I would always hear, you will know when the time comes. You will know when the time comes. And ultimately, I did know. Ultimately, I did. I understood that I was being taught everything that I know now, that I use now, which is really helping humans to really wake up to who we are. Activations that I do and things for the DNA, because our DNA is storing up our dormant DNA. We have dormant DNA that's storing up information about who we really are and what we're really here for. And that's just waiting to be awakened in humans. So there's a lot of that was happening. Yeah. And even more than that.
At any time, did you feel negativity? What they were doing was negative.
Never felt negativity, just felt weirdness. Weird. Like, the word weird is like, I can't put there's nothing I can describe to explain this. It's bizarre, strange, weird, not negative. I just couldn't understand it in the moment. And that's my recollection of it. I didn't know what it was. I didn't understand, and it took me a long time to make sense of it.
What is that sense that you made? Because I think that's important for people to hear.
Yeah, now I really understand. We, as a human species, are a hybridized race of many star family races, which we would call extraterrestrials, and that our DNA has all the codes of all those star family races that they needed from us for their evolution, and we also need to awaken in us for our evolution. And that these codes that are in our dormant DNA store up the keys, store up the solutions to all of our world problems, and they also hold the solutions to every illness. That we are the healers. We have the potential to heal every illness. There's no illness in our future. There's no disease in our future. Now, when that will, it's already starting. If you're too plugged into the mainstream, you won't know it. But every person will be telepathic. Every animal and human will be treated with kindness and compassion in our future. We'll shift into greater good of all of humanity. Love, and it's not woo-woo to know that humanity is on a trajectory of true unity consciousness, connection with the divine within us all, and with a service to the greater good of all. That is our future. We may not be able to see that from our current perspective. Not everybody knows it or can see it, but I know that is our future. And the only requirement is that you start aligning with that. You choose to be in peace. You choose to be in love. You choose to be in service. You don't have to become a spiritual woo-woo person. You just have to choose those higher, lighter frequencies of peace, love, kindness, compassion, forgiveness. And as you do, you will align with that future. And that's what that abduction, so to speak, I call it an induction, was. That's when you say, what did you make sense of it? That's what it is.
Your experience sounds so positive and enlightening, which really matches the stats to Dr. Edgar Mitchell's free experiencers. Yet the public perception of extraterrestrials in any type of contact or abduction is highly negative. Where do you think that comes from?
Well, first of all, I think that prior, like I will go back to those presidents, Truman, Eisenhower, they made certain agreements with what I would call negative aliens. So negative is a connotation of a judgment, but nonetheless, maybe more malevolent intentioned aliens, or maybe they weren't even malevolent so much as they were just more self-serving, and they were influencing us more to their own service to their own selves, and they had their own personal agenda rather than the greater good of the collective. And those abduction experiences that were done on humans, Roswell and all those things in the 60s that were, very secret, those were not benevolent experiences. They were not. So, of course, humans have that perspective, and there's good reason for it, because there was a lot of abductions that were not benevolent and that were very self-serving, and that many of those more, we could say, negative aliens, greys and reptilians and draconians, they were using human genetics, the DNA, that we have the keys. They needed our DNA for their survival of their species. So they didn't ask permission. They weren't here to be of service to the greater good. It was completely self-serving, and they did it in detrimental ways to humans. And many humans are traumatized from those kinds of experiences, understandably. But that's not what my experience was. Mine was completely benevolent, and part of my unique experience of it, and my recall, is basically that I would call myself a braided, I use the term to define myself as a braided starseed, which means the aspect of myself as a star being braided in with my human self during that induction experience, sort of entangled as one, so that I have complete knowing of myself as a human prior to Maui and all my human experience, and I have all my connection with my future star self as a star family race who's living here on Earth as a star being, assisting with humanity. Just one of hundreds of thousands. I'm not alone in this. I know there's many of us. So that's what I make of that.
Would you want to go again?
Would I want to go? What do you mean specifically?
In regards to on another contact in vision or...
Yeah, I mean, I suppose I would. I think for years I really was like, that's enough. For years after that, I was like, don't bother me. I have to work through this. I had to integrate it. I did a lot of my own personal research and healing on it. And I did sessions. I did some regression sessions. I've done sessions with other channelers who had access to star races. So, for a long time, I was like, let me make sense of all of this before I have another one of those experiences. But now I would, because I really do get that it's very benevolent. It's designed, we are really reuniting with our star families, and it is meant to be benevolent. And the rules of the game after 2012 have completely changed. So these malevolents are not, from what I understand, they're really not allowed to do that anymore, although if a being is still entangled with it or working through those issues, maybe they might still have that kind of experience. But overall, they're not allowed to usurp our free will choices anymore, where they did before. They were controlling. They had control over. That's not what our new reality is about post-2012.
We only have about 5.5 minutes left with you, and I want to get into this post-2012. What happened in 2012? Are you going by the Mayan calendar where the world was supposed to end, but really a lot of people believe it was just a shift in dimension or a shift in the timeline, something more simplistic?
Well, let me say, the Mayans knew that 2012 was a major marker point. So, but it wasn't about the end of the world. It was about the end of the old reality, which has been basically, we've been living in a reality that I call third dimensional reality. I'm not alone in that. And that reality was controlled, dominated, and manipulated in our physical reality by global elites who basically used control, domination, manipulation, coercion, fear to suppress humanity. That was part of the game, so to speak. I call it a game, right? Because it's part of the game of being unconscious to expand consciousness. But after 2012, humanity was liberated. Humanity has been liberated. So that's why I know World War III can never happen. It's not possible anymore because the frequency, the elevation of light and the frequency of love is too powerful. The desire for peace, the choice for peace, post-2012, that's what we're shifting into. Humanity basically was liberated. And the old control system that's collapsing now in the aftermath of 2012 wanted people to buy into this fear programming, so they perpetuated the belief system that it's the end of the world. That's just simply not true. It's the end of their control. Those who wish to control through force, domination, manipulation, lies, deceit, fear, they still are playing their game, but they have less and less power and they're losing control. And they have really effectively lost the game after 2012. I know, does this make sense? It's hard to say it all in 5 minutes, but
well, it kind of does. It honestly kind of does. You know, I wasn't surprised when the world didn't end in 2012 because the people who were throwing out the panic situation and the fear mongering that goes along with it somehow miscommunicated the calendars because they forgot to add in the leap year days that weren't created until way after the Mayan calendar was created. So realistically, take those days out, it would have been or you add those days in, it would have been sometime in 2013, not 2012. But I digress on that subject. We got about 2 minutes left with you. And I wanted to say thank you so much for coming on Spaced Out Radio tonight. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you enlighten us and to, bring your stories and your experiences to our audience tonight.
Well, Dave, thank you so much for having me and for inviting me. And it has been an absolute pleasure for me as well. I'm really grateful to have been able to share and contribute. And thanks to all the listeners too who shared in the chat room.
Quickly tell us about your latest book.
Well, right now I'm working on something called 2 Years in Maui, which is going to share and elaborate on this everything we've been discussing tonight. But, there's lots of great, there are the books I've already written that are on Amazon about animal communication and telepathy and developing your psychic gifts. And there's one on the secret energy of money. There's a lot on manifestation. There's one on superfoods for you and your pets, because really it's driven by, wanting to fuel the body in a healthy way. There's tons of stuff on YouTube for people who want to learn more about the energy healing and the activations that I do, and if they really want to work on clearing out a lot of the unconscious stuff. There's so much great content that's gifted through my YouTube channel, which you can easily find by searching my name. And also there's tons of great stuff that's free and gifted through the website. If you head over to the website at LoriSpagna.com/free gifts, You can get tons of great free gifts. And then if you scroll down on the home page, there's a free class on activating your dormant DNA. There's great stuff for animal lovers. And then there's some really interesting stuff on learning about star seeds and light workers and star families. And so, yeah, you can head over there if you want to get some more juicy content at the website.
Well, thank you so much for coming on Spaced Out Radio tonight. Lori, what a pleasure it's been, and we'll have to do this again.
Oh, I would love that, and it has been my pleasure, so thank you so much, Dave.
Wonderful. Lori Spagna, once again, her website, lorispagna.com. That's LORISPAGNA.com. Coming up next, we have the encounter with Everett Themer. We are encountering the encounter tonight. As the back end of the show, we bring in our news director, Everett Themer, to tell us all about the weird, the strange, the wacky, the WTF in the news of the day. These are stories that you probably will not find on your local or national newscast, but still fun nonetheless. So we bring in the president of Team Stump here at Spaced Out Radio. Remember, you can go to spacedoutradio.com, click on the news section for the encounter, and we would appreciate if you give us a read. Everett, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, but I really need to pass that president torch on to you.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
You are the founder and fearless leader.
Well, you know what? It's a badge of honor for you to say something like that, but nonetheless, I still strongly believe that you are the torchbearer. You are the guy running. You are the Paul Revere of Team Stump, man.
Then where's my T-shirt?
It's coming. It's totally coming. We're revamping the Spaced Out Radio store, and there will be a Team Stump T-shirt on there for all of you to get.
I'm really looking forward to those.
Me too. I want to see a bunch of people get that Team Stump thing, man. I think that'll be hilarious. Imagine walking down, downtown New York or downtown Las Vegas or wherever you may be, and you're, doing your own thing, walking down the sidewalk, and all of a sudden you see a Team Stump SOR T-shirt. That would be hilarious.
I would wear that all the time.
Oh, yeah. It's because you're the El Presidente of the club.
No, that's you.
I know Mr. Skeptic would be walking around the hot streets of Pahrump wearing a Team Stump T-shirt. He just seems like that kind of guy.
Out in that Nevada desert, I don't know if I'd wear much of a T-shirt at all. Seems like it's always broiling out there.
Oh, of course. It's in the middle of nowhere, man. It's the middle of the desert. In the meantime, I almost had to put a jacket on today.
Must be nice.
Almost had to put a jacket on today. I had a little bit of a freaky incident.
Really?
So the little guy today, and I'm, as a parent, I'm trying to get all adjusted back to school life and all that kind of stuff. And because it's been 14 years since my daughter was in kindergarten. So with the little dude, we get him to school today. And after school, I'm waiting by the school bus. And he doesn't come off the bus. And I'm like,
that could be nerve-wracking.
I'm like, uh-oh. And our neighbor boy, who goes to kindergarten as well, says, yells from the bus, you were supposed to pick Colby up. And so I quickly run home, grab my vehicle, go to the school. As I'm walking into the school, the principal calls and says, your son is here. Were you supposed to pick him up? I'm like, no, he was supposed to take the bus. But I guess they got it confused that he was waiting for me, but he was hoping that I was picking him up today because he was missing dear old Dad today.
Oh, well, that's nice. But I thought he was enjoying the bus rides.
Yeah, I think he just got confused a little bit because, there's still that emotional thing,
Yeah. It will pass, though. Soon he will be fully engrossed in the kindergarten experience, and it's going to be a lot of fun for both of you.
I hope so.
Except when you start getting those phone calls that say, we'd like to maybe have you come in and talk to us for a minute.
Yeah.
Those are a little nerve-wracking.
Oh, yeah. I can honestly see it happening right now, him going to school. Yeah, my dad talks about UFOs, Bigfoot, and ghosts. And the teacher's saying, yeah, we don't talk about that stuff in here. I could see it now. I can absolutely see it now. And it's
but people's ideas and views on that kind of thing is changing. So I don't think it would be a huge problem or even worthy of a conference.
I hear you. I can just see the fight. Honestly, I truly can. And, it reminds me of the time when I got a call from my daughter's school counselor one day. And I made the mistake of asking if she's talked about seeing dead people, because my daughter is very psychic. And the lady her counselor says, we better get her treated right away on something. And I kind of flipped out on her. I said, all that, I literally said to her, I said, all that education and you're going to try and put my daughter on drugs? Don't think so.
Wow. That's a little extreme.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of extreme. What's happening in the news, my friend?
Well, these first three stories, I think we just need to bow our heads and mourn humanity for just a little bit. Because one of them involves a student driver and a potential accident and the vehicle ending up in a swimming pool. Mm-hmm. And this happened in Maryland. And, with a student driver, you can almost picture anything like that happening. In fact, I remember when I was in driver's ed, we had a kid get a vehicle stuck on the curb. But this wasn't kids. This was a couple in their 50s and 60s. And the police are unsure who was driving at the time, but apparently one of them was instructing the other on how to park, and somehow they just ended up crossing some brush and a curb and ending up in a city pool.
That's some bad driving.
Was
there any drifting involved?
I don't think so, but at 50 or 60 years old, you don't expect, well, first of all, you don't expect somebody to be a student driver, and you would think that something like that would be out of the realm of what's going to happen.
No kidding, eh? I am just like, did the kid get the license? Let's just be blunt here.
Oh, this just happened. It's under investigation, and there is no kid involved because one of the passenger, or one of the people was in her 50s or 60s, and the other one was too. So this wasn't like a 16-year-old or a 15-year-old with a permit. This was some people that you would think had some driving experience.
How does that even happen? Let's just be blunt here. How does that happen?
I guess there could be a variety of, if it were me, I would blame it on, some sort of vehicle failure, mechanical failure. I'm not going to take the blame for that.
You got to think of an excuse fast.
Maybe they were taking selfies or texting or something like that. That's what that hip crowd does now these days.
Well, isn't that just illegal? Isn't that just illegal?
We can't say that, though. We don't know exactly what happened, but just the idea of somebody... the part I found funny, I guess, was the idea that it was a student driver. If I'm 50 and I don't have my license... and
See, that's why I thought it was a kid, because you said student driver.
Yeah, that's what they're labeling this person as. They don't know which one, like I said, they don't know which one was driving yet, and apparently neither one of them is being too forthcoming, but they both were on the scene. They were able to get out of the vehicle, but it did end up at the bottom of a city pool.
Weird, man. Absolutely weird. Let's go to the next one.
There must be a little something going on with that East Coast kind of New England area, because there was a video released by police in New Hampshire of a man who got his young toddler daughter into one of those claw machines and had her handing the prizes out to him as another child stood by.
Right. Who does that? What kind of parenting 101 course says feed your child in through the little box there and get them to crawl inside? Who does that?
He really wanted that Nintendo DS. I told you, it's kind of one of those days to just hang our head in shame.
Was child welfare called on this guy? Because if
no,
not,
they don't
it should have
know. They don't know who the person hasn't been identified yet. But yeah, you would think that, I've seen cases like this before where somebody does get in trouble with social services or child welfare for doing something like this. I mean, not only is there the theft, but there is the, excuse me, the danger aspect.
I mean, what happens if the kid gets stuck?
That has happened before.
Yeah. I mean...
And fire departments have been called to extricate the child from those games.
Yeah, because lo and behold, you just don't get the key to open it.
But the guy wanted the Nintendo DS.
Well, I get that. I get that. And that's kind of old school fun. All right. But, why not try and win one? And we all know the claw is rigged. All right. We all know the claw especially when it's giving away like iPads and stuff like that. We all know that claw could barely hold a feather.
Yeah, but what better way to spend quality time with your family than to teach them how to circumvent a game?
Well, that's why I'm saying is because, this is where child welfare should be brought into this, because that is wrong.
In your eyes, but in this guy's eyes, maybe it wasn't. That's
I get that.
That's what people think today. If they want something, well, if they can find a way to get it, they'll get it.
The sense of entitlement. Gotta love the sense of entitlement with everything, don't you?
Yes, sadly.
Whatever happened to working hard for something?
You don't need to work hard for things like that when you have a kid who can slip through that little door to grab it.
I realize this. I do realize this. All right, and I can appreciate that.
Working hard is difficult.
There are certain things I don't do. Mrs. SOR has called me stubborn about it. For instance, I never went ATVing with my friends until I bought my own ATVs. I don't go camping or RVing because I don't have my own. You know what I'm saying? There are certain things that if I want to do it, I'm going to earn it and then get my own, because I hate borrowing things. I hate relying on other people. You know, when I moved up here, I had a Jeep, and I realized that I needed a truck because I needed to get wood for the winter. So I wasn't bugging people for their truck. What I was doing was I went and traded in my Jeep to buy a truck because it was more useful. I mean, maybe that's just too simplistic, but I don't do things unless I can see the light at the end of the tunnel, you know, or do it for myself. And, you know, teaching your kid that it's okay to steal something because daddy wants it, you know, that's a bad parent, man. Bad parent.
I'm sure that this is a life lesson that both those children are going to remember and unfortunately probably use again in the future.
See, that's where the court should bring those children in, as well as the father. And how old were the children?
One was a toddler and one was appeared to be about 5 or 6.
Okay, so the toddler isn't going to know or remember, but the child that is 5 or 6, what a great lesson to go into court with dad and get told by a judge that is wrong. Have the police officers there and everything like that. What a perfect way to teach that child, because children, for the most part, are taught to, you know, respect the police. And respect,
you know, in a way,
rules.
In a way, you may be right. Maybe, you know, going back to the old-fashioned idea of letting a child think they're in serious trouble to kind of teach them a lesson, maybe bringing the whole family up in front of a judge if they manage to find these people wouldn't be such a bad thing.
Exactly. It'd be great for the child to learn. That's for sure. Why not? You know, I mean, we talk about these scared straight programs. That's a good one right off the bat. You know?
I think you're right.
You know, and let the child feel, you know, and I don't think it's a bad thing. Let the child feel the pain of daddy having to go to jail for a night. Even if he doesn't have a record, let daddy go to jail for a night.
Speaking of going to jail, before we run out of time, because we spent a little too much time on those two, we've got to hit a couple more. And this one, I have to thank Ron Moniak for putting this on my radar.
The Ukrainian watermelon. Good guy. He's coming up to the Paracon here too.
Is he? That's. I wish I could get up there. I can't make it this year. I don't have the time. But in Manassas, Virginia, Michael Dwayne Johnson was arrested for, he walked into a grocery store and he dropped his pants and was rubbing produce on his bare butt and putting it back into the produce bins.
Oh.
So the grocery store basically had to destroy several pallets of produce, and he was arrested and charged with destruction of property and indecent exposure.
Who thinks of that? Honestly, who thinks of that? Who says I'm going to go drop drawers at the local supermarket, go into the produce section, and rub celery between my butt cheeks? Who does that?
You know,
Those
and it's
aren't
not
tomatoes.
It's not like the produce section is a quiet corner of the grocery store. I mean, it had to be in front of a whole bunch of people. Even the smallest grocery store, the way they're designed, they have quite an active traffic flow through that produce section. And I mean, I don't even like taking off my pants to go to bed. I couldn't imagine doing it in the middle of a store and then, you know, rubbing an avocado on my butt, maybe wandering over to the sweet potatoes. Like I said,
what happens when he gets to the corn?
You know what? I'm not touching that. We're just gonna leave that one alone.
Okay, next. Oh, those aren't bell tomatoes. Anyways, next story.
Oh, they just keep getting better.
Oh,
Darren Wood from Norwich, England, ordered food from a chain called Byron, and he used they service similar to what we have here, Grubhub. Theirs is called Deliveroo. And when he got his food, the food had hair in it. So he called the delivery service and registered a complaint and wanted his money back. And initially they denied giving him his money back because they said that the hair in it was a matter of personal taste.
What?
Initially, the initial customer service representative denied giving him a refund for his food and the delivery charges because they believed that it was just a matter of personal taste. Now, since then, he did register some more complaints and got a little bit of attention on social media, and the company Deliveroo has issued a statement saying that they're going to give him a full refund and offer him some free deliveries. But I don't know if I would use it. And I don't know if you've seen the photos of this, but it is like a clump of hair in his food.
That's terrible. That is
delicious.
Terrible. You know, like, how do you even deny that? You know, I got to go back. When I was in college, I went to Burger King, and I ordered up a cheeseburger and a poutine. And the poutine comes in like a styrofoam soup type cup with the plastic lid. You know what I'm talking about? In order to keep it warm. So I pull off the plastic lid, and there's something sticking to it. And there was a used Band-Aid on there.
That's seasoning.
I have never been more grossed out in my life than when that happened, man. Never been more grossed out.
That is.
Oh, even thinking about it today just you know, gives you like that, you know, you want to wipe your tongue off because it's just so disgusting. So I called up Burger King, and they didn't even want to give me a free meal. Now, this is before cell phones had cameras or anything like that. They didn't even want to give me a free meal.
Really? You didn't take it right back?
I did. I absolutely did. Well, first off, the Burger King was across town. Like, it was like a 15-minute drive. Not, and I know that doesn't sound much, but I mean, you know, when you're hungry, you're hungry. So I called them up, and I'm like, there's a Band-Aid stuck. They basically said, what do you want to do with it? I went, really? Are you kidding me right now? There is a Band-Aid stuck to my lid. Yeah.
Yum.
Went to the other Burger King, filed a complaint. I got a free meal.
Well, see, it all worked out for you.
Yeah. Thought of the Dave coming up right now. Band-Aid on my poutine. It's terrible.
Boy, that phrase just sounds dirty.
It does. It's terrible. Thought of the Dave happens every night at this time, where we ask a question on our Facebook and Twitter pages, then we read your responses because we love the audience participation. So today's Thought of the Dave is as followed. What do you do to lift up your spirits on a bad day? Robert put a bunch of emojis. Lots of alcoholic emojis. Robin, I watch comedy as in horror flicks that are slashers. Sometimes you just have to see people hacked to death. I don't know why I find that so funny.
When somebody's right, you got to admit they're right.
I got to read this again. I watch comedies as in horror flicks that are slashers. Sometimes you just have to see people get hacked to death. Like, that might be the most brilliant Thought of the Dave answer that we have had. At least the most honest.
He's a member of Team Stump.
Oh, total member of Team Stump. Good job, Robin. Matthew says, drink a coffee, play video games, and watch wrestling clips on YouTube. Oh, who doesn't go onto YouTube and watch old Ric Flair promos? Those were the best. Just the best. Pamela, I tell myself that this too shall pass, and I try not to be too hard on myself. Steve, cannabis, no such thing as a bad day. Tanya, for good humor seems to do the trick, or for me, good humor seems to do the trick. If I'm working, I listen to a playlist I made on YouTube that has songs. Weird Al Yankovic helps as well. Edie, listen to some old school music. Sing, dance, and remember when times were simpler. Michelle, I play Skyrim on my PS3, go for coffee with friends, watch Netflix on my work, or work on my website. Gail, I go to YouTube and watch Rob Zombie videos because I love that song about UFOs. He's the best. Gail is strange that way with her Rob Zombie addiction. Totally strange.
It is a little frightening.
It is. Jeff says, when I have a bad day, I tune to a good friend, a friend who's there every night for me, Monday through Friday, the soothing voice of the one and only Dave Scott. Wow. I guess I owe Jeff a drink at Paracon next week for that one.
I think you do.
Yeah. Let's roll here. David says, the spirits I prefer to lift up on a bad day would be Ezra Brooks and Maker's Mark. Another David says, grab the acoustic and bang out some tunes or hit the gym. Tim is all about comfort food. October, music, art, organized bones. Ooh, that's kind of weird.
Excuse me?
Well, she must have a bone collection, I guess. I really don't know.
Let's not pursue that one.
No, not at all. Angie on Twitter says, I turn a silly bad B movie on. Think Asylum Pictures. Graham, prayer, meditation, or work. Daniel, I try to think positive thoughts or watch something funny like South Park or The Simpsons. And if that doesn't work, I'll listen to SOR's archives on YouTube. Thank you for that. Really appreciate that. Probably a good place to end it right there. Robin, I can't get that one out of my head, man. I really can't get that out of my head.
That's the perfect answer. Somebody who's a little sick and twisted.
Oh, I got to read that again because that was just brilliance. I watch comedies, as in horror flicks that are slashers. Sometimes you just have to get to see people hacked to death. I'm not even a horror fan, and I love that answer. Love that answer.
I love horror, so I can totally relate to that.
All right. Appreciate that. While I stop my laughing, Everett, where can they find the encounter?
People can find the encounter on spacedoutradio.com under the news tab, or they can go over to Facebook and check out SOR The Encounter online.
Perfect. Thank you very much. We want to say thank you to our guest, Lori Spagna, for coming on the first 2 hours of the show to talk Ascension. Tomorrow night on the program, it's Ghosts of the Great White North with Mike Morin from Haunted Crew of Canada. We get going at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern at spacedoutradio.com. Don't forget, tickets are on sale right now for the first annual Caribou Paracon by Spaced Out Radio, Canadian Society of Questers, September 28th through 30th. Go to questers.ca. Click on the fall conference. Get your tickets right now. We got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL rocking in the background with Little Brother is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening in at home, at work, in your cars, wherever you may be. Big thank you to everybody on Spreaker for an awesome night. Thank you, Rev Radio, for your great chat room. On Twitter at hashtag Spaced Out Radio, and the Veterans Club, the SOR Space Travelers, led by Uncle Dale's Power Stash tonight. Thanks for sharing the show, telling your friends all about us, because together, my friends, we own the night. I will talk to you in 21 hours from now. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Good night, everyone. See you tomorrow.